In the year 2150, 10 years before Earth's complete destruction, the world was consumed by injustice following the rise of the superpower era, while humanity continued living carefree lives, laughing and enjoying their peaceful days. Chen was the only person who knew the future. Earth would eventually be destroyed by the Demon King Wrath, the being who would open the gates of hell and drive humanity to extinction. But this time, everything was different. Chen had been reborn with a mysterious system known as the power of gluttony. Once treated as worthless and bullied throughout all 4 years of college, Chen now possessed a power capable of changing the fate of mankind itself. Yet if he wanted to stop the apocalypse, he needed to grow even stronger. He would have to enter deadly dungeons, confront terrifying demon kings, and rewrite the future with his own hands. But Chen was never doing this for humanity. He was doing it all for one reason alone: to protect his little sister. Let us turn back time. On May 16, 2167, humanity's final fortress collapsed beneath the assault of the demons. The world officially fell into the apocalypse. Amid a sea of flames and endless ruins, explosions echoed non-stop. Humanity's last hope was slowly fading away. Chen, an SSS-rank lightning assassin, was already exhausted. Blood covered his face, yet his eyes still burned with the will to fight. 7 years earlier, at the moment when the first demon kings appeared, Demon Vorlun stood proudly within the inferno, leading an army of demons to destroy the human world. Vorlun looked at Chen with disdain in his eyes. He mocked him as humanity's so-called final hope, when in reality he was nothing more than a weak and useless man. Crimson demonic energy flared within Vorlun's hand. He sneered that the only thing Chen was good for was becoming his next meal. Dark power erupted violently. The sharp crackling of electricity spread across the battlefield. Vorlun laughed madly and declared that he would absorb Chen into his own power. A blinding white light suddenly burst forth from Chen's side, accompanied by desperate screams echoing everywhere. Chen refused to surrender. He poured every last ounce of strength into his body, unleashing scarlet lightning that engulfed him completely. In his mind appeared the faces of the people most precious to him: his younger sister, his comrades, and his master. Every one of them had been slaughtered by demons. Chen's face twisted with killing intent and fury. Crimson lightning began flashing around his mouth. This attack is for them. Chen decided to sacrifice everything, swearing to drag this monster down with him. The SSS rank ultimate skill, Apocalypse Arc, was unleashed. A gigantic pillar of light tore through the night sky. Demon Vorlun panicked as he realized his body had been completely paralyzed. Unable to escape the range of the attack, Chen's body began breaking apart piece by piece within the blinding white light. He closed his eyes and calmly accepted his fate. Memories of his younger sister and master flashed through his mind like shattered glass, leaving behind unbearable pain in his heart. The image of his once happy family appeared before him. Chen silently apologized for not being strong enough to protect them. But now, he was finally ready to reunite with them. He blamed himself endlessly. If only he had been stronger back then. Perhaps he could have prevented the first Demon King from ever appearing. A catastrophic explosion erased everything in the surrounding area. In his final moment, he remembered a mysterious dungeon he had once missed. His last fragments of memory faded into the void. He had lost everything. Suddenly, Chen opened his eyes. Instead of hell, he found himself lying on a clean medical bed beneath the warm morning sunlight. He immediately sat up and checked his body. His hands were still wrapped in bandages. The feeling of being alive was beyond belief. Looking around the quiet infirmary room, Chen was stunned, wondering where he was. Through the window, he saw college students casually walking across the campus grounds. Chen could not believe his eyes. The world had not been destroyed. Everyone was still alive, living their normal lives as if nothing had happened. He sat silently on the bed, struggling to understand what had just happened. Chen looked at the clock. May 16, 2157. He realized he had traveled 10 years back in time, returning to his days as a college student. A strange sound echoed inside his head, resembling the static noise of a radio signal. Moments later, a digital system interface appeared before his eyes, announcing that the Devour Authority had successfully fused with him. Chen stared at the floating notification screen. This was the exact day from 10 years ago. When the catastrophe was still far away, it was also 3 years before the Demon Kings began destroying humanity. In the year 2160, Wrath, the Demon King of Rage, would appear. Memories of enormous tentacles destroying entire cities resurfaced in Chen's mind. Wrath was the one who opened the gates of hell, paving the way for the other Demon Kings to invade the human world. He was the source of all suffering. He was the one who stole away everything Chen held dear. Chen lowered his gaze to his hands, clearly feeling that his current body was real and alive. If he could kill Wrath before the Demon King opened the gates of hell, he might be able to change the entire future. Chen stared at the floating Devour Authority panel before him. Ever since he woke up, it had remained constantly in his sight. He reached out and touched the mysterious system interface filled with glowing lines of code. Instantly, a complete character status window appeared, leaving Chen utterly shocked. Chen, level 1, but the strange part was that all of his stats, such as strength, speed, and stamina, had already reached 100. He had never seen anything like this before. For someone who had not even awakened yet, those numbers were completely unimaginable. Chen recalled the past, when he could only fight using the tiny amount of awakened power he possessed. The school he currently attended was the National Awakener University, a place reserved only for people capable of awakening. Ironically, in his previous life, Chen had studied there for 4 years without ever managing to awaken. During that time, he had constantly been looked down upon and bullied by other students. Perhaps that was why, after waking up this time, he found himself lying in the school infirmary once again, lost in thought. Chen suddenly froze as another system interface appeared before his eyes. Displayed on the screen was the information for the Lightning Assassin class. The exact same power he had possessed in his previous life. His speed and spirit stats were both maxed out. Along with powerful skills such as Flash God and Electric Blade, Chen could not hide his shock. This was his old class. He never expected his former SSS rank power to return this early. A familiar current of electricity began flowing throughout his body. Chen wondered whether all the power from his previous life had truly been carried over into his current body. The system began the class conversion process. Chen understood that it was finally time to test just how much power he truly possessed. Right at that moment, a clicking sound echoed as the infirmary door suddenly opened. A short young man wearing thick glasses rushed inside with a worried expression. It was Marlin, an E-rank awakener of the Cloud Chanter class and also Chen's roommate. The moment he saw Chen sitting up, Marlin immediately ran over in panic, repeatedly asking whether he was okay. Chen calmly replied that he was fine while secretly observing Marlin's reaction to confirm one thing, aside from himself. It seemed nobody else could see the system interface. Marlin was completely stunned to discover that all of Chen's injuries had vanished without a trace. He could hardly believe his friend's recovery speed was even faster than that of a true awakener. Looking at his non-stop talking friend, Chen realized that this truly was Marlin, his best friend from his student days. In the memories of his previous life, Marlin had been kind-hearted but rather weak. He had been killed during the very first days of the demon invasion. But now, Marlin was standing right in front of him, completely alive and healthy. Feeling the familiar warmth and hearing his friend's familiar voice, Chen finally believed that he had truly been given a second chance at life. Suddenly, Marlin remembered something important and nervously blurted out that tomorrow was the crucial ranking evaluation, and they barely had any time left to prepare. Although Chen is still considered to be someone who hasn't awakened their superpowers, Marlin still dragged him out of the infirmary because tomorrow's test results would determine whether they could graduate or not. The two of them stepped out onto the campus beneath a crimson sunset. The lively scenery of the university spread out before them, filled with countless students training their abilities, sparring matches on the grassy fields, laughter echoing everywhere. Everything created the peaceful atmosphere Chen had missed for so many years. Looking at the crowd ahead, Chen quietly muttered that it had been a very long time since he had seen this many people still alive. The strange comment startled Marlin, making him think his friend had just woken up speaking like a horror movie character. Laughing awkwardly, Marlin shoved Chen forward and said, "All right, stop saying creepy stuff already. Let's walk around campus so you can clear your head." Chen silently walked along the narrow path. He had already lost everything once before, and this time he swore he would protect this peaceful world no matter what. He understood better than anyone that if he continued living weakly like he had in his previous life, The future filled with destruction and death would inevitably repeat itself again. I can't keep hesitating anymore. I need to find a way to level up immediately. Determination burned clearly within Chen's eyes, but the biggest problem was that in this era, the only way for an awakener to grow stronger was by entering dungeons and hunting monsters. The unfortunate part was that most valuable dungeons had already been taken over by major guilds, leaving ordinary students with almost no chance to enter them. Looking at his stat panel filled entirely with 100s, Chen began comparing his current strength to the government ranking system, which consisted of 6 ranks from S to E. In reality, most students could only reach E rank, while D rank was reserved for geniuses or those backed by powerful connections. With the experience of a former SSS rank assassin from his previous life, Chen silently evaluated his current abilities. He was certain that he was already stronger than Marlin walking beside him. But if he took the ranking test right now, the outcome was still difficult to predict. Suddenly, a loud thwack echoed through the air. A ball flew in at incredible speed and slammed directly into Marlin's face, sending him crashing to the ground. Marlin groaned in pain as his glasses were knocked far away by the unexpected hit. From the distance, a group of young men approached with arrogant expressions. One of them burst out laughing. "Oh, look who we have here. Isn't this the Chen and Marlin duo?" The leader of the bullies sat casually on the stairway steps. He looked down at the two of them with contempt before mocking how quickly they had recovered. Marlin trembled in fear, silently cursing his terrible luck for running into this group at a time like this. The lackeys standing around them all wore aggressive expressions, as though they were ready to pick a fight with anyone weaker than themselves. The leader sneered and proudly told his friends that these two were the best punching bags he had ever used for training. With complete confidence, he ordered Chen to go buy drinks for them, fully convinced that Chen would obey like he always did. Marlin became so frightened that he hurriedly apologized, preparing to immediately go buy the drinks just to avoid trouble. But Chen raised his hand and stopped his friend. He stared directly at the bully with cold eyes and said, "You don't need to apologize. The ones who did something wrong, and should be apologizing, are them." Chen stood still, his gaze cold as if staring through the past. In his mind, terrible memories surfaced, and the anger inside him began to flare. The image of Chen being submerged underwater appeared clearly in his mind. The choking breath and the despair of his previous life made him never want to go through it again. In that bathroom years ago, Edmund Gong, with a terrifying smile, forced Chen's head down into the sink. Around them, his cronies laughed in delight as they watched Chen be tortured. Marlin at that time could only kneel on the floor, eyes full of fear. He begged them desperately to stop, but only received looks of contempt. Edmund turned his head back with a smug expression. He laughed and asked why they should stop a fun game like that. He continued to apply more force, ignoring Chen's futile struggles. To him, someone like Chen who hadn't awakened was just a toy for entertainment. The bullies' laughter echoed throughout the room, drowning out the sound of running water and the faint cries for help. Their cruelty grew more terrifying by the moment. After they were satisfied, the group swaggered away, leaving Chen slumped by the sink. For them it was just a joke, but for Chen it was a wound that would never disappear. Marlin hurried over to help Chen up, his voice trembling with worry. Seeing his friend unconscious, he felt pain at his own helplessness. Chen slightly bowed his head, his hair-hiding eyes burning with killing intent. He wondered why people like them always enjoyed hurting the weaker. Cruelty did not only exist in dungeons, it also lived right in the human world, inside those who liked to trample others with their strength. Before leaving, Edmund turned back with a vicious smile and said he'd go easier next time. Returning to the present, Chen's words made Edmund freeze. He couldn't believe a useless guy like Chen would dare speak to him that way. Standing beside him, Marlin was sweating profusely. He asked Chen, voice shaking, what he intended to do. Chen's current aura made him feel extremely frightened. Edmund began activating the power of an E-rank awakener. His arm turned into a rough wooden layer, emitting a strange green aura, the symbol of the Flower Warrior class. Chen's eyes shifted to a cold red. A dangerous power seemed to be awakening inside that seemingly frail body. Chen knew perfectly well Edmund only bullied others by relying on his brother, the student council president. He himself wasn't truly frightening at all. The crowd around began to gather, eager to watch Chen get beaten as usual. In their eyes, the outcome was already obvious. Jeers continued to ring out aimed at the two useless students who had just left the infirmary. No one knew they were about to witness something unprecedented at the school. Edmund stepped up close to Chen, his shadow falling over him. He sneered when he saw Chen still standing without fleeing. He barked, asking what Chen had just said. The wooden power on his arm made creaking sounds, as if ready to crush his opponent. Chen looked straight into Edmund's eyes and warned coldly. He demanded that they never bother him and Marlin again, angered that someone powerless dared resist. Edmund unleashed an extremely strong punch. He shouted that Chen was asking for death. A loud explosion rang out. To everyone's horror, Chen stopped the E-rank Awakener's punch with just one hand. The force of the impact made Edmund's wooden arm tremble violently. He screamed in pain, not understanding what had just happened. The crowd fell completely silent. The air grew heavy as everyone stared at the hand holding Edmund's punch. Chen remained standing as if unaffected, his gaze unmoved even slightly. People began to wonder whether this was real. Edmund roared in humiliation. He couldn't accept being stopped so easily by someone who hadn't awakened. At that moment, golden lightning began to dance across Chen's hand. He smiled dangerously and said Edmund would be the first to test his new power. A system notification rang out. Class change complete. Chen officially became a rank 1 lightning assassin, with strength and speed stats greatly increased far beyond that of a normal person. Marlin gaped in astonishment. He couldn't believe his friend had awakened such a terrifying power. Fierce electricity surrounded Chen's body, turning him into a true warrior amid blinding light. The strongest predator had finally revealed himself. Edmund refused to yield. He immediately activated his strongest defensive skill, the immortal demon armor. His body was covered in jagged, rock-hard armor, ready to launch a counterattack. He swung an extremely powerful punch at Chen, charging forward and shouting that he'd make him remember how painful a beating could be. But Chen's speed had surpassed normal human vision. He moved like a bolt of lightning, disappearing and reappearing behind Edmund in the blink of an eye. A punch laced with thunder struck the bully's face. A violent blast echoed as blood and shards of armor flew everywhere. That tremendous force sent Edmund flying into the air before slamming him hard into the ground. His sturdy armor shattered like glass. Everyone watching was stunned with horror. Marlin and the crowd stood frozen like statues. No one could believe the situation had reversed so brutally. Edmund lay collapsed on the ground, breathing raggedly from the pain. Still, he kept cursing in desperation, refusing to accept being defeated by a useless person. He turned and yelled at his cronies, ordering them to rush in and help instead of standing there like statues. But the lackeys only stood there trembling. Sweat drenched their faces from fear at the terrifying pressure radiating from Chen. Amid the blazing electrical light, Chen stood like a true demon. His eyes were cold and full of killing intent, ready for the next step in his revenge plan. Edmund screamed wildly from pain and humiliation. He swore he would kill Chen to reclaim his honor. But his arrogance was now utterly crushed by that overwhelming power. Chen gave his opponent no further chance. He gripped Edmund's wooden arm tightly, letting golden electricity begin to eat away at the hard armor. A crack echoed across the silent schoolyard. Edmund screamed miserably as the arm that had once been his pride snapped easily. While Chen coldly regarded him like a discarded object, Chen's eyes glowed the yellow of lightning, creating a pressure that made everyone struggle to breathe. He said coldly, "People like you are nothing but trash." Immediately after, a fist wrapped in electricity slammed into Edmund. The fierce power exploded, shattering any remaining attempts at resistance. Edmund's large body was blown away like a leaf in an electrical storm. He was hurled backward, smashing through the stone steps with immense force. A loud explosion rang out as Edmund hit the ground, creating a small, dusty crater. The surrounding crowd forgot to breathe as they watched the school's strongest bully be defeated in an instant. Edmund lay motionless amid the wreckage, his breathing growing faint and blood trickling from his mouth. His once fierce face now showed only fear and despair. Marlin fell to his knees, eyes wide behind thick glasses. He couldn't believe the friend he had always thought needed protection had become so terrifying and powerful. Marlin muttered in amazement, his voice trembling. The image of the weak Chen had completely vanished, replaced by a warrior full of killing intent. He had no idea when Chen had grown so strong. Chen stood silently, looking at his bloodied hands with a calmness as if it were perfectly normal. He felt no remorse, only quietly calculating something. A hazy status panel appeared before his eyes. Displaying the parameters that had just been activated, Chen began to synthesize what he had learned from this trial. The first thing Chen realized was that he could freely switch to the Lightning Assassin class at any time. This was a huge advantage that would always give him the upper hand in battle. Second, although the system showed he was only rank 1, his current physical power was enough to defeat an E-rank Awakener. That indicated his true strength was far greater. However, a new issue arose that made Chen think. Things didn't seem to be unfolding exactly as he expected regarding the leveling system. Chen looked at the status panel, which remained unchanged after the fight, and suspicion welled up inside him. He had clearly won, yet the stats stayed frozen and did not increase. A cold thought formed in his mind. Perhaps true leveling required a far more ruthless act, not merely knocking an opponent unconscious. When Chen summoned a blazing electric sword in his hand, Marlin and those around immediately screamed in panic. They felt the terrifying killing intent radiating from the youth. The electric blade pressed against Edmund's throat as he lay dying. Its heat began to burn his skin. With the slightest movement from Chen, the bully's life would end instantly. Under the dangerous red light, Chen wondered whether the method of seizing power in this life was as cruel as it had been in his previous timeline. Just then, a female voice called out, reminding everyone this was a school area. A pair of slender legs approached the scene. It was Arya Ling, the vice president of the student council. She smiled gently, thinking that the punishment was already more than enough. She declared that from now on the Edmonds wouldn't dare touch them again. Arya's eyes revealed clear interest in the delinquent student before her. Chen stopped, looking at the loser sprawled on the ground at his feet. The student council's arrival eased the tension in the air somewhat. He thought to himself that they were quick to jump in to protect Edmund. In reality, Chen hadn't intended to maim him that badly at the moment, but with scum like them, if you don't make them afraid, they'll keep coming back to cause trouble. The crowd around them began to whisper and stir, trembling under Chen's terrifying gaze. They couldn't believe the so-called waste had changed so much. Ignoring the murmurs about the school's two weakest walking together, Chen quietly signaled Marlin Ma to leave. Arya Ling stayed there, watching Chen's retreating figure with a knowing smile. She began to wonder about his true strength. Night fell in the boys' dormitory, and the quiet was suddenly broken by excited shouting. Marlin spun around wildly, trying to convince his roommates that Chen had awakened into an immensely powerful lightning assassin and had delivered payback to Edmund. Perched on a chair, Weston Xiang glanced over and asked where this superhero was now. Marlin awkwardly replied that Chen had gone for a run. Hearing that, Weston curled a sneer. He didn't believe someone strong would need to do basic cardio like that. He ruffled Marlin's hair, calling him an idiot for believing such nonsense. Clearly, there was no logic to it. Riley Xiang was still absorbed in his computer, a lollipop in his mouth. He agreed that Marlin must have been beaten into delirium. Weston began lecturing about the harsh reality of rankings. In this room, all four of them were the school's bottom tier. He started bragging about his job as a nuclear mage, though the lowest ranked among mages. At least it was the only combat profession here. Flexing his arm to show off, Weston insisted Chen was a pathetic loser about to die and could never be a lightning assassin. He was counting on tomorrow's graduation ranking evaluation. The truth would be laid bare there. In an E-rank training dungeon, a fierce blaze of energy was erupting. The guards stood at attention, waiting. A tall figure stepped out from the shimmering golden light. His bearing exuded absolute authority. Cole Gong emerged wearing a coat stained with monster blood. The student council president had just finished his daily grind with ease. He ordered everyone to finish up, while subordinates bowed respectfully. An overwhelming power made everyone stand in awe. As he stepped out, Cole Gong saw his younger brother Edmund waiting, his face heavily bandaged. Edmund looked utterly pathetic. Edmund screamed in frustration, begging his brother to punish the one who had humiliated him in front of everyone. He claimed it was an insult to the Gong family. Cole Gong listened quietly, his golden eyes flashing coldly. He had grasped the situation of the incident. With a single line, "Leave it to me," Cole Gong silenced Edmund. For Cole Gong, dealing with a useless kid was nothing difficult. At an elegant dinner, Cole Gong leisurely cut into a premium steak. Arya sat across from him. Watching his expression, Cole Gong casually remarked about his brother, saying Edmund simply hadn't been good enough so he got beaten. He asked Arya whether the other guy was truly strong. Arya reminded him that Cole Gong had absorbed nearly all the D-rank students into his club. He held absolute power in his hands. She asserted that those mediocre people would never have a chance to catch up to Cole Gong's level. The gap between them was too vast. Amid the torrential rain outside, the silhouette of a young man ran tirelessly across the deserted campus. The patter of rain drowned out his ragged breaths. It was Chen. He was doing a 20-kilometers run with 100 kilograms of iron weights on his back. Sweat and rain mixed together. Chen understood that physical strength was the foundation of an awakener's potential. But for him, that was still nothing compared to the grand goal ahead. The horrifying memories of 2160 resurfaced. Back then, Demon King Wrath descended upon the world and began slaughtering thousands in an instant. The most painful memory was his only family member, his sister Iris C, being killed by him right in front of Chen. Her desperate screams still haunted him. Wrath had opened the gates of hell, allowing other demon kings to flood in and ravage the world. Everything was left as ashes and death. Back in the present, Chen Sis' eyes flashed with resolute light. His first target had been identified. That target was to eliminate Demon King Wrath, the one who had sown destruction across his and his sister's future. Only 3 years remained until Wrath's return. He was growing stronger every day, and Chen had to grow even faster. He could not let the tragedy repeat. Suddenly, the phone strapped to Chen's wrist vibrated, shattering the solemn atmosphere. The screen showed a call from Iris C. Chen froze for a few seconds, his heart pounding with emotion. He hurriedly answered, sweat still streaming down his forehead after the intense rainy workout. On the other end was Iris Sis' voice. His sister scolded him for repeatedly missing calls today. She had just finished an exam and only just managed to charge her phone. Iris excitedly announced the good news that if she won this contest, the two of them would finally have enough money to cover their overdue rent. Standing in the rain, Chen fell silent with emotion. He remembered begging the universe thousands of times for a chance to start over. Iris noticed the silence and asked if it was raining where he was. Chen smiled faintly and replied that it was nothing. Deep down, he vowed that even if he had to sacrifice everything, he would protect her at all costs. Tears mixed with the rain streamed down his face. But Chen wore a happy smile. It had been too long since he had heard his sister's voice while she was still alive. Iris, puzzled by her brother's oddness, laughed and said they had only talked 2 days ago. She arranged to meet him to hang out after the contest ended. After hanging up, Chen looked up at the dark sky with determined eyes. This moment confirmed one truth. He had indeed been sent back to the past successfully. He sprinted through the rain, determined to do 3 more laps. Chen told himself he had to become stronger faster than anyone to protect what he cherished. 8 hours had passed since Chen returned to this timeline. In the dorm, everyone had fallen asleep after a long day. Chen stood under the shower, feeling the vitality of youth coursing through him. This body was not yet powerful, but it was gradually aligning with his will. After drying off, Chen began to consider a more perplexing problem waiting ahead. To level up, he needed to enter dungeons, but most of them were sealed off and completely controlled by the major guilds. Tossing and turning in bed, Chen realized that without money or influence, an ordinary guy like him would find it very hard to access the monsters. He closed his eyes, pondering the mysterious power he had just received. He wondered what exactly the Devourer's strength truly was. In his subconscious, a system interface began to appear and ran the initialization process at breakneck speed. Loading complete, the Devourer system officially went online, pulling Chen's soul into a surreal, blazing red space. He fell freely through an undefined void before landing firmly by the instinct of an assassin. Before Chen stood a gigantic, jagged tower rising from waters as dark red as blood. He couldn't help but be stunned by the majestic and terrifying sight. Chen looked around warily, cold sweat breaking out. He clearly remembered dozing off in bed, yet now he was trapped in this hellish place. Staring at the strange tower before him, Chen couldn't help but wonder where this place actually was. Immediately, from the blood-red ground, a pack of doomhowls with ghastly white skulls crawled up, growling as they surrounded him. The system suddenly announced a class change in progress. Lightning began to appear and envelop Chen's hands. The process completed, and Chen officially became a level 1 lightning assassin. Although he still didn't understand what was happening, the first thing he needed to do was deal with the monsters in front of him. The Doomhowl pack crazily charged, baring fangs and raising claws as if they wanted to tear the intruder apart. But moving with the speed of an assassin, Chen blurred like a ghost, unleashing electric slashes that cut through their bodies. One monster's head was smashed, and the system immediately notified him that he had obtained materials from it. To Chen at this moment, the Grade E monsters were nothing more than weak beasts. He disposed of them very easily. Everything felt so real that Chen was certain this wasn't a dream. Especially as his experience points kept rising. After only a few minutes of fighting, Chen leveled up to 2. A new source of power flooded his body, filling him with excitement. All his stats increased by 5 points. Chen's body felt lighter and his reactions noticeably faster. Chen smiled confidently when he realized he had a personal dungeon to freely grind levels. Suddenly, a gigantic creature appeared. It was the King Doomhowl, the boss ruling this area. It roared a sound that shook the space, sending a terrifying chill everywhere, signaling that the real battle had begun. But combat experience from a previous life allowed Chen to deliver a finishing blow extremely quickly. A large amount of experience immediately poured toward him. After defeating the boss, Chen directly reached level 3 and received many rare items. He thought to himself that killing bosses was indeed far more effective. In a short time he had risen 2 levels. Unexpectedly, a red line of text appeared right above the boss's corpse. Can be devoured. Chen's eyes widened in surprise. This was a completely new feature he had never seen before. He wondered what devouring meant, and whether it had anything to do with the gluttony power. Chen reached out his hand toward the monster's corpse. A strong light instantly appeared in his palm. He began to feel a strange connection between himself and the King Doomhowl's corpse through the power of gluttony. A vortex of energy appeared, madly sucking the boss's corpse inward. Chen clenched his fist as the absorption process neared completion. A devouring complete notification popped up, accompanied by a class card belonging to the very boss that had been slain. Chen was stunned to realize he could not only kill monsters, but also turn their powers into his own. His eyes were filled with amazement at this absurdly excessive ability. Then Chen suddenly remembered seeing a similar power in the past. It was the terrifying ability of a demon king. A deep red aura appeared around him, as if swallowing everything nearby. Chen realized this was the power of Demon King Voralun, an extremely horrific existence from his previous life. He couldn't believe he now possessed that ability. Chen's heart raced with excitement. According to the rules of this world, each person could only have a single class for their entire life. But now, 2 different class cards appeared before Chen at the same time. A crazy thought popped into his head. What if he continued devouring more monsters? That would mean Chen could possess countless classes, a power that would break the entire world's rules. But why would someone like him possess this ultimate power? That question remained unanswered. Chen turned his head to look back at the tower behind him, feeling as if something was waiting for him inside. At that moment, a huge explosion rang out, causing the entire space to tremble violently. A terrifying pressure bore down on Chen's shoulders, almost knocking him off his feet. From the darkness of the Dreadspire, the Overlord emerged and said coldly, "So you finally arrived." The mysterious figure calling himself the Overlord appeared before Chen and addressed him by name. A massive blast erupted, sending Chen flying. In this world, power is classified by ranks from the lowest E to the highest S. Chen was thrown aside, blood spraying under the horrific force of the attack. He gasped in pain, bitterly realizing he was only rank D right now, utterly too weak against this enemy. Standing before Chen was a true rank S boss. The power gap between them was almost insurmountable. Chen couldn't understand what kind of dungeon this was to be guarded by such a catastrophic existence. What was most frightening wasn't just his strength, but that he knew Chen's identity. They exchanged blows repeatedly, but in truth the Overlord had many chances to kill Chen instantly. An extremely powerful slash sent Chen crashing painfully to the red ground. The Overlord toyed with him like a cat with a mouse. Each attack deliberately avoided lethal strikes. He looked down at Chen and asked whether he still had the will to fight. Chen quickly realized his purpose. This monster didn't want to kill him, it wanted to force him into submission. The Overlord made an offer. He wanted Chen to stay in the Dreadspire and guard it with him if he wanted to survive. But with the pride of a warrior, Chen would rather die than be imprisoned in this hell. In response to that defiance came a slash so fast Chen couldn't see it. A long cut instantly opened on his shoulder, blood spraying everywhere. The Overlord said only Chen was capable of entering this place. which was why he had spared his life until now. The purple energy from the corpses of the surrounding monsters began to fly toward the Overlord. His power continued to grow as he issued his final warning. He forced Chen to choose. Either be loyal and stay, or be crushed immediately. Lightning flashed in Chen's determined eyes. He had his answer. Chen chose to kill the monster. He lunged forward with a determined roar. In his eyes there was no longer fear or intent to surrender. How foolish! The Overlord roared, commanding enormous boulders to hurl toward Chen. Chen focused all his spirit, moving with extreme speed as his body became shrouded in lightning. The clash of metal rang piercingly amid the chaotic sky. Though completely outmatched, Chen gradually got a feel for his opponent's attack rhythm. He discovered each of the Overlord's strikes required about 0.4 seconds to wind up. Using that brief moment, Chen repeatedly dodged the death scythe descending upon him. He also found another flaw. After each attack, the Overlord had a roughly 0.2 second recovery window. As long as he timed it right, Chen could counterattack. The Thunderblade activated. Chen charged and drove it straight into the Overlord's chest. The full-force strike produced a paralyzing effect, enough to immobilize an S-rank foe for a few brief seconds. Immediately after, the Thunderstride skill activated, increasing Chen's speed tenfold. Chen poured all his remaining strength into a charge toward the light on the horizon. It was the only escape he had observed, and he wagered his life on it. Chen's hand trembled as he nearly touched the light of hope, but at that moment, the light suddenly vanished. The Overlord reappeared behind Chen, coldly saying that the escape was merely an illusion meant to deceive him. He seemed impressed by Chen's analytical ability but insisted this place had never been a normal dungeon. Chen went silent as he realized all his calculations had been manipulated by the Dreadspire. The Overlord's true form gradually revealed itself. He was Infernal Rakshasa, a terrifying S-rank stellar warrior. The sight left Chen utterly stunned. That form was Demon King Vorlun from his memories. A memory from a past life surged back. It was the final, brutal battle against the Demon King Vorlun. A demonic face with blazing red eyes appeared. Vorlun, humanity's eternal enemy, harbored a terrifying source of dark energy. During the fight, he constantly shifted between multiple powerful classes, rendering every human attack ineffective. Waves of destructive energy erupted, obliterating everything nearby. His power surpassed all natural laws. From thorned, dark vines steeped in evil energy, a grotesque entity rose, ready to devour the soul of anyone in its path. Chen recalled that moment clearly. The form of his old enemy now manifested in his mind. He looked deep within himself, trying to understand the strange connection between him and this dark force. Before Chen now stood the Infernal Rakshasa, a massive creature clad in jet-black armor with streams of purple fire surrounding it. It stood there, towering like a god of destruction, radiating an oppressive aura that made it hard to breathe. Chen was stunned to realize that if this devouring power once belonged to Vorlun, it had now merged with his body. He wondered where he was. Could this endless crimson space be the world inside his own mind? The Infernal Rakshasa curled its lip, revealing razor-sharp teeth. It acknowledged the young man's sharpness and iron will. You are fully deserving of everything in this place, the demon's voice declared with authority. A golden key glittering with a red gem appeared. It was the SSS-ranked Chronorift key, a unique item used to open the entrance to Dreadspire. Rakshasa pointed toward the gigantic tower behind them. He revealed that the strongest demons Vorlun had swallowed were sealed there. Chen stared at the floating key. Rakshasa wanted him to devour them all to continue increasing his power. He took hold of the dangerous gift, feeling suspicion rise within. Why would a demon like him want to help me? Rakshasa turned his back, his silhouette fading into a blood-red mist. He bitterly recalled how the Demon Kings had wiped out his race out of greed. He had waited a long time for a chance at revenge, and now he gambled everything on Chen, the only one capable of carrying it out. Chen stood frozen. Had he just referred to him? Who was that person? Really? He tried to call out, but the demon's form vanished. All answers lie within Dreadspire. Go find them yourself. Rakshasa's voice dissolved along with the collapsing space. Rakshasa's body began to disintegrate into countless purple shards of light. He passed on his final will. Take my power and make them pay. Take his power? Chen froze, his hand still reaching as if to hold onto an unresolved truth. Rakshasa's face suddenly grew fierce. He ordered Chen to open the Dreadspire gate and devour every entity inside, before disappearing completely. He warned that the demons in the tower would show no mercy like he did. They were the most cunning and brutal creatures, but Chen must overcome them all. Defeat every enemy to stand atop the summit. Amid the crimson mist, ghosts of fearsome demons roared. The mission was clear. Devour until the last demon king. Only then would Chen be worthy of the power. Rakshasa fully dissolved, leaving purple embers drifting in space. He had placed all hope on his successor. In Chen's hand, a devouring status bar appeared. Purple electricity began to spread across his body. The system announced level up. A pillar of golden light enveloped Chen, marking a breakthrough upgrade to level 10. His gaze grew cold. Rakshasa's legacy now belonged to him. Ready for the challenges ahead, the devouring process completed. The infernal Rakshasa card appeared with astonishing stats and ultimate skills like devouring death. I'll make them pay in blood, Chen muttered, then suddenly opened his eyes. The alarm clock blared repeatedly. Shattering the dream, he jumped up on the bunk. Drenched in sweat but fully alert, Chen realized he was back in his familiar dorm room. Outside the bed, his roommates were rushing to prepare for the evaluation. Marlon Ma shouted for him to hurry or he'd be late. Chen checked his body. Unbelievably, all the wounds from last night's battle had completely vanished without a trace, but the system panel was still clearly visible before him. What he had experienced was not a dream. He truly had become a level 10 stellar warrior. All basic stats from strength to speed had skyrocketed to 150. Chen wondered which rank this power would correspond to within the academy. Just then, Shang Zuo approached with a curious expression. Shang Zuo excitedly said the whole school was abuzz about Chen suddenly becoming powerful. He wanted to know if Chen could now topple the room's number 1. Seeing Chen remain silent, Shang Zuo quickly changed the subject, reminding them the ranking evaluation was about to start and they couldn't be late. Prove your strength then, Shang Zuo said excitedly. But Chen's eyes seemed to hide something far beyond anyone's expectations. Walking and eating, Shang Zuo jabbered on about the academy's complex hierarchy system. He was proud to have reached mid-tier rank EA position he believed was enough to surpass most freshmen. Each rank was divided into 3 grades: low, mid, and high, with clear power gaps between each level. Shang Zuo brimmed with confidence, believing this test would be his chance to shine after 2 years of waiting. Chen, when it's your turn, give it your all. Reach rank D and shut everyone up. Marlon cheered. Chen responded only with a solemn look. Rank D? That goal seemed far too small for his current power. The schoolyard was packed. The hurried footsteps of students created a tense, urgent atmosphere. At the gathering area of the National Awakening University, the official ranking evaluation began under the watch of the entire school. Suddenly, Edmund Gong's lackeys appeared with their customary arrogance. Shang Zuo, seeing them, immediately grew worried and suggested the group keep their distance to avoid trouble. Chen paid no mind to that suggestion. He walked with obvious confidence. And when the bullies saw him, they instantly became fearful. They even bowed to Big Brother Chen. Leaving Shang Zuo baffled and unsure what was happening, he began to believe the rumors that Chen had defeated Edmund yesterday were entirely true. Ignoring all the stares, Chen stood motionless in the schoolyard, his eyes sharply observing everything. An arrogant voice rang out from behind. Chen narrowed his eyes slightly, revealing a dangerous look. It was Holloway Chang, a well-known student council officer who always appeared with a haughty demeanor. He sneered, reminding Chen that Edmund was the younger brother of Cole Gong, the powerful student council president. Chen's friends grew tense as soon as they recognized the newcomer. Holloway was not someone to offend lightly. Not only backed by the president's position, Holloway himself was a true rank D expert with superior strength. Holloway stepped closer, leaning toward Chen's ear and smugly boasting of his keen sense of smell, claiming he could detect the strong from afar. But from you, he curled his lip in contempt. I only smell the rot of a failure. Someone who will forever decay at the bottom of society. Despite the insults, Chen kept a terrifyingly calm expression. He retorted sarcastically, asking whether Holloway was a man or a dog to be sniffing around like that. Offended, Holloway's face immediately darkened and he shouted in anger. He hadn't expected a trash like Chen to dare openly talk back to him. At that moment, a commanding voice rang out from behind, ordering Holloway to stop. The sudden appearance caused the atmosphere to instantly subside. It was Cole Gong. the student council president, with an imposing demeanor. He stated that he'd examined the matter carefully and knew Edmund was the one who started the trouble, not Chen. Cole Gong coldly demanded Holloway accept the outcome. If you're wrong, you accept punishment. Holloway, spiteful but resigned, still bowed his head to obey this authoritative president. Cole Gong closed the dispute with a sharp glance. His prestige at the academy was absolute. No one dared resist. Chen Si quietly watched the student council group leave. His blood-red eyes showed no emotion. Despite having just endured a tense confrontation, the loudspeaker announcement echoed across the schoolyard. The official ranking assessment exam had begun. Students would enter the teleportation gate in order of their student numbers. As he walked away, Holloway didn't forget to sneer, treating Chen as nothing more than easy prey. Cole Gong walked beside him, silently preparing for his own test. From above, the hall revealed the bustle of thousands of students. Everyone's attention was focused on the evaluation platform that would decide their futures. From a luxurious observation room, Stephen Yuan, a middle-aged man with a long scar on his cheek, and Arya Ling watched the exam. Stephen wondered if there would be any truly outstanding candidates this year. Arya Ling took a gentle sip of tea, her violet eyes showing clear anticipation. She judged that this year's exam would surely have many interesting things to watch. An hour later, the name Weston Shang was called. He stepped onto the platform to enthusiastic cheers from his friends. Confident, Weston vowed to prove his real ability to everyone after all his days of training. He decisively stepped through the blue energy gate into the isolated testing area. Inside was a sealed space crisscrossed with countless cables, creating a gloomy, pressurized atmosphere. At the center of the testing room pulsed Demon Heart, a bizarre biotechnical device beating rapidly. This was what would measure the student's entire energy. Weston didn't hesitate. He braced himself and unleashed his strongest attack with all his current power. A brilliant burst of energy shot straight at Demon Heart. The collision produced a thunderous explosion. Demon Heart took the full impact, its pulses becoming more frantic than ever. The energy was fully absorbed by Demon Heart and transmitted through the cable system for data analysis. Red lights ran along the conduits to the external processing equipment. The system emitted a tone indicating processing was complete. The results were about to be displayed on the large screen before the entire hall. The screen showed Weston Zhang's result. Rank E mid-tier. A fairly ordinary result by the Academy's standards. Supervisors recorded the parameters but were still waiting for another important index. The crowd began to whisper and speculate about the result. The students below were excited, awaiting the most enticing part of the assessment to be revealed. The screen switched to measuring potential, the highest limit a student could reach in the future. Numbers began dancing across the electronic board. A golden C appeared. Weston's potential ranked C, meaning he had a chance to join the nation's special training programs. Weston stepped out of the teleportation gate with a disappointed look. After 2 long years, he still hadn't made any progress toward the D rank he had hoped for. The next name was called for testing. Meanwhile, in a corner of the stands, Marlon Ma and his friends tried to console each other over their less than encouraging results. Marlon and Riley Shang reluctantly accepted the reality that their group was stuck at rank E. They worried that no one this year might break through to rank D. Suddenly, the screen exploded with the completion announcement displaying numbers that shocked the entire hall. Everyone gaped in astonishment at the rank that appeared. The first rank D of the year had appeared. A student had just achieved rank D basic tier with a potential of B, sending the stadium into an uproar of cheers. A few minutes later, Holloway Chang strode out with a smug smile. His result was even more impressive. Rank D basic tier with potential up to A. He laughed triumphantly amid everyone's admiration. The 2 supervisors below looked extremely pleased. They judged this year's class to be a real goldmine, possessing too many rank D talents with combat potential. Attention suddenly shifted to the next named contestant. He walked steadily onto the stage, drawing every gaze from the thousands of eyes. It was Cole Gong, the student council president and son of the prestigious Imperial Guild leader. The hall erupted as the number 1 genius appeared. Chen Si stood among the crowd, silently observing his most formidable rival. His red eyes narrowed slightly, as if awaiting Cole Gong's performance. Murmurs rose non-stop about Cole Gong having achieved rank D 2 years ago. Everyone was curious whether he could break the school's highest record. Rank D mid-tier. Cole Gong faced the measuring device with sharp eyes and absolute confidence. He prepared to unleash a decisive strike to assert his unrivaled position at the academy. Cole Gong calculated silently. He decided not to display his full power now, saving it for graduation, the moment a spectacular debut would make the biggest splash. Though he held back deliberately, Cole Gong's eyes still flashed with absolute confidence. He was certain that even without full force, the school's record would sooner or later be crushed by him. The instant the attack landed, the energy analysis system recorded massive fluctuations. Brilliant columns of energy waves danced across the screen, signaling an unprecedented result. The seasoned judge was stunned, sweat beading on his brow as he witnessed strange colors emanating from the measuring device. He stammered, unable to believe the meaning of those readings, and then, the final result appeared gloriously. Rank D high tier with potential reaching S, an unimaginable figure for an ungraduated student. The whole hall seemed to explode in shock. Cheers roared everywhere as people realized they just witnessed a genius with the highest S-level potential, something only millions of awakened individuals possess. Holloway Chang and his followers screamed in excitement, continuously praising their president. The school's record had been convincingly broken. The surrounding crowd was still stunned. Many felt envious but also full of admiration. Chen stood quietly amid the sea of people, his face unchanged by the feat. The assessors hurriedly re-verified the data once more to ensure no mistakes. They immediately discussed reporting this result to higher authorities given its enormous significance. This news would surely dominate the headlines tomorrow. A false awakener with S-level potential was not only the school's asset but a national treasure. Especially since he was the son of the Imperial Guild chairman. Cole Gong emerged from the testing room with a proud expression. This result was entirely within expectations, further consolidating his royal status. High above, Stephen Yuan excitedly affirmed that this year's evaluation was truly a goldmine. He couldn't hide his excitement seeing such a talented younger generation. Stephen turned to ask Arya Ling, thinking she was here because she knew beforehand of Cole Gong's S-level potential. He gave a knowing smile to the beautiful student council president. However, Arya Ling shook her head slightly in refusal. She insisted her purpose for being here was not because of Cole Gong. Arya's violet gaze sharpened as she admitted she was actually watching someone else. Someone she believed would bring an even bigger surprise than Cole Gong. Her gaze pierced through the crowd, settling directly on Chen's position. As the loudspeaker announcement rang out, the name of the next person to step onto the evaluation platform was called. Chen. The name echoed through the charged air. Chen looked up calmly. He knew this was the moment to change the rules of the game at this school. Chang Di, wearing a contemptuous smile, stepped forward and taunted, telling Chen to at least bring some glory back to his shabby dormitory. He laughed loudly, mocking the group as nothing more than weak E-rank losers gathered to be the school's joke. The electronic board clearly displayed the results for Weston, Riley, and Marlin. All of them only reached E-rank. Marlin, furious, shouted directly at him that just wait. Chen would make everyone fall silent. The name Chen appeared on the screen, and he quietly walked through the gate into the measurement room. Outside, his friends watched anxiously, unsure whether Chen could pull off a surprise. Inside the machine room, Chen walked among tangled cables connected directly to a strange device. It was the demon heart, the core of the measurement system. With a demonic eye staring menacingly, Chen's eyes suddenly turned red, his aura visibly shifting as the system began to scan. In this world, the graduation exam is the only chance for Awakened to get noticed by the major guilds. The rules were strict. Teams of up to 10 could form freely, and the top team would be directly recruited into the prestigious Imperial Guild. But beyond classifying strength, the test had a much larger purpose: selecting teammates for the real combat trials at graduation. Chang Di remained outside with a smug look, satisfied with his own D ranking. He boasted that his team had gathered 9 of the strongest D rankers this year, almost certain to take first place. Even Cole Gong, the academy's prodigy, was surrounded and praised by the crowd. In complete contrast, Chen's group stood quietly in a corner, as if cut off from all attention. Marlin fidgeted, constantly adjusting his glasses, anxious because Chen had been inside far too long with no result. The screen displaying Chen's results remained blank, with no response, making the atmosphere even tenser. Students began to whisper, mocking that maybe Chen was so weak the system couldn't measure him. Chang Di sneered, telling Cole Gong not to waste time waiting and that he should leave. Cole Gong also started to lose patience and gave a slight nod in agreement. At that moment the screen suddenly glitched. Data lines streaming as if overloaded. A ding sounded, and the result displayed clearly. Advanced D rank. Chen's friends froze, unable to believe what they had just seen. Marlin shouted in joy, insisting Chen was no ordinary person. Chang Di and Cole Gong both went pale, their faces full of surprise at seeing an E ranker suddenly reach the top of D rank. Inside, the Demon Heart's eye began to tremble violently, the system continuously warning of instability. Chen looked at the stats board and realized that in his base state, his level 10 already equaled the peak of D rank. But that wasn't all. He began to activate the class switch skill. Class King Doomhowl was unleashed. Half of Chen's face covered by a powerful demonic bone mask. Outside, the rank on the screen continued to skyrocket, the D disappearing and being replaced by C rank. The crowd erupted in astonishment. No one understood what was happening inside the room. Cole Gong stood stunned while Chang Di broke into a sweat, muttering that he couldn't believe it. The instructors and technicians panicked. They had never seen the system behave so irregularly. The machine's demonic heart convulsed constantly, leaking a fluid as if it were terrified. Chen smiled faintly. If King Doomhowl reached C rank, the other two classes would surely be even stronger. A burst of purple-black energy exploded as Chen shifted into his current strongest class, Infernal Rakshasa. The Demon Heart's eye widened, trembling under the tremendous pressure from the newly awakened Demon King. A colossal vortex of energy rose up, shaking the entire building and sounding like rolling thunder. Chen's friends fell to their knees. They felt that this was no longer a normal test but the birth of a legend. The external measurement screens were utterly shattered, data streams overlapping each other in chaotic disorder. But amid the chaos, a blazing golden S flashed, potential far beyond any limit human instruments could gauge. Seeing the error on the screens, the technicians screamed in alarm, unable to believe their eyes at another person showing S-tier potential. Cole Gong stood motionless, his eyes stunned as he realized his record was being threatened by someone once regarded as trash. The system kept issuing red alerts. The overload was pushing the Demon Heart to its absolute limit. Everything collapsed entirely. A system error message appeared like a full stop for the Academy's most advanced measuring device. The measured values had exceeded processing capability, becoming an indeterminate value beyond standard metrics. And 3S letters appeared on the screen. The crowd outside could only stand in stunned silence as murmurs spread everywhere. A massive explosion followed, blowing the measurement room door off in a cloud of thick smoke and dust. Staff panicked and rushed inside. Fearing for the safety of the student trapped within, they quickly assessed the situation, hoping the teenager had survived the blast. The chief technician was stunned to see Chen still standing amid snapped cables. But more terrifyingly, the Demon Heart, the system's core, was completely drained and had ceased functioning. Everyone wondered whether today's overload had caused the prized device to explode. Only Chen knew the truth. He smiled faintly, realizing he'd gone a bit too far activating the Infernal Rakshasa class. But in return he gained a major benefit. The Devour strength had consumed the machine's core, granting him the extremely rare A-tier Lux Demon Heart skill. The new energy began to fuse into his body, creating an invisible pressure that spread outward. Chen's eyes turned an ethereal blue, and the newly acquired skill activated instantly. When he stepped outside, his vision flooded with information, the levels and ranks of everyone appearing clearly. Chen calmly observed the crowd, silently thanking the ill-fated machine for giving him a useful tool. His gaze stopped at Cole Gong. A C rank label hovered above him. Chen murmured, "It turns out you were hiding strength too." On the high platform, the instructors awkwardly announced the test's postponement, asking the remaining students to return the next day. They tried to avoid the truth, blaming equipment malfunction instead of admitting the presence of an overstandard individual. Meanwhile, Chen's friends were ecstatic. They believed their friend had actually been a concealed genius all along. But Chang Di, the arrogant one, refused to accept it, loudly accusing Chen of causing trouble and sabotage. He shouted that Chen had deliberately damaged the machine to cover up his own weakness. Sparks began to dance across Chen's hands. He had lost patience and was ready to teach the loudmouth a lesson. Suddenly, a low voice rang out, cutting through the tense air. It was Cole Gong, demanding that Chang Di show respect to his future teammate. The entire hall fell silent at Cole Gong's words. while Chang Di stood stunned, unable to understand why a prodigy would side with Chen. Cole Gong smiled, extended his hand, and said, "Join my team. Together we'll shatter every record in this academy." Chen looked at the outstretched hand, his gaze cold as if he'd seen through every hidden motive. Cole Gong, the powerful student council president, suddenly extended a direct invitation to Chen to join his elite team right in front of everyone. The whole school knew that a spot on Cole Gong's team was almost a guaranteed ticket to victory in the upcoming graduation exam. The news exploded like a bomb, sending the crowd into an uproar. Others had to fight tooth and nail, even resorting to tricks for a slim chance. Yet Cole Gong proactively invited someone who had just ruined the measuring device. All eyes turned to Chen, full of envy and curiosity. No one understood what was so special about him to receive such favor. Chang Di, standing beside Cole Gong, began to worry. He understood that if Chen joined, his position on the team could be replaced. Suppressing his resentment, the underling forced a smile and prepared to reach out and welcome the new member as the leader wished. But Chen's reaction exceeded all expectations. He brushed the man's hand away and said coldly, "Not interested." The space fell silent instantly. Cole Gong froze, his amber eyes narrowing, danger flashing across his face at the blunt refusal. Chang Di angrily berated Chen for daring to look down on the academy's strongest team. But Chen remained indifferent, paying him no mind. Chen turned his back and left, leaving a cold warning that they were bothering him and would do well to stay away. This insult enraged Chang Di. He shouted in vain after Chen had gone, leaving a tense atmosphere behind. The students nearby couldn't believe their ears. They thought Chen was being arrogant to refuse the student council president. However, Chen's C-rank results made many rethink. They began to suspect he had goals beyond simply relying on others. In another corner, those who disliked Cole Gong's group's arrogance felt pleased. Chen's action struck a heavy blow to their pride. Cole Gong watched Chen's retreating figure, a faint smile tugging at his mouth, as if intrigued by the situation. He realized the other wasn't simple. From above, several influential figures in the academy were quietly observing the whole affair. Stephen Yuan, a veteran hunter with a long scar across his face, sighed with regret that two talents couldn't cooperate to create a miracle. Beside him, Ling Yu showed interest in the development. To her, Chen's resistance felt fresh and more appealing. Chen knew Cole Gong well, a person who got everything easily. Being publicly refused was like a direct blow to his pride. She knew Cole Gong wasn't the kind of person to let this go. Chang Di kept criticizing, claiming Chen had only been lucky because of a system error and couldn't be a true C rank. But Cole Gong thought differently. He began to consider the worst possibility, if that power was real. He couldn't allow Chen to become a threat. The underling started whispering sinister plans. He trusted his combat experience and wanted to teach Chen a lesson. Cole Gong appeared calm and asked if he was the petty type. Hearing that, the underling immediately panicked and hurriedly retracted his words. He declared they'd go out to relax with the team that night, regardless of what the subordinates wanted, as long as it didn't trouble him. A cold look from Cole Gong's yellow eyes served as tacit permission, so long as he didn't have to be directly involved. Understanding the hint, Chang Di smiled with calculation. He already had his own plan. He nodded in satisfaction, silently thanking Cole Gong for looking the other way and giving him a chance to act. Minutes later, news that Chen had left the academy grounds spread quickly. Another guy hurriedly confirmed that Chen hadn't even eaten dinner before leaving. Perfect. The blue-haired boy crushed a soda can underfoot. Realizing this was a good opportunity now that the target had left the safe area, he swore he'd teach Chen a lesson and wouldn't let anyone stand in his way. Meanwhile, Chen Si walked calmly down the street, unaware of the men silently tailing him. His mind drifted back to the horrific memories of his previous life, to the tragedy that had occurred in Sanhaven. There, Wrath, an unrecorded monster, had appeared and completely annihilated a top hunters guild. Its devastation had marked the start of a bloody invasion into the human world, a memory Chen never wanted repeated. To stop Wrath, he needed a detailed plan and substantial funds to prepare for the coming battle. The first stop in that plan was the Mithril Monster Exchange, the nation's largest monster item trading center, operated by the Mithril Guild and destined to become the busiest equipment market. It was the ideal place for Chen to start his plan. For hunters, equipment is the key determinant of strength. It's also the fastest way for Chen to earn his initial capital. He took out the sharp fangs, spoils from previous battles, and placed them on the inspection table. The store manager's proud expression shifted when he handled the items. He couldn't believe a student owned such pieces. Chen calmly explained they were items dropped by monsters. The manager's astonished look showed they weren't ordinary. The pink-haired clerk watched intently and quickly recognized them as E-grade materials from a Doomhowl. She eagerly explained Doomfang fangs could be used to forge weapons or make potions. But the manager immediately waved it off, deeming E-grade items worthless. He arrogantly insisted the shop only accepted items of D rank or higher. Not low-value stuff like that. Inwardly, he was worried about the lack of VIP customers, fearing it would hurt his promotion prospects. Seeing Chen casually looking at his phone, he sighed in disdain, assuming the boy had no potential. Not wanting to waste time, he handed the task to the new clerk and left, offering a perfunctory compliment. The girl gently handed Chen a pouch containing 18,000 and politely asked if he needed any further assistance. $18. Enough to cover living expenses. But for Chen, it was only the beginning. All right, Chen replied softly. His hand began to emit purple energy modes, signaling another item was about to appear. He drew out a massive greatsword radiating brilliant light, making the air around it heavy. Please check this for me. The clerk was stunned, nearly holding her breath at the weapon's presence and beauty. Though she'd never seen anything like it, she sensed its very high value, guessing it was at least B rank. Possibly A. Hearing this, the manager sneered, calling it impossible since A-rank weapons were extremely valuable, far beyond a student's means. At that moment, a deep voice sounded from behind. She's right. But this is neither B nor A. The manager startled and turned around, thinking he had an ally. The manager laughed loudly, ready to continue mocking Chen, but his smile vanished when he saw the speaker, a composed gentleman with blue hair. He adjusted his glasses, eyes lighting up. This is S-rank equipment, originating from the Hells. The manager's face went pale, sweat pouring down. S-rank? Impossible. The gentleman ignored him and stepped forward to shake Chen's hand formally. Welcome. Sir, it's our honor. He smiled, repeatedly showing his respect, leaving the manager frozen in stunned silence. He personally led Chen into the most luxurious VIP room, ready to accommodate any of his requests. Leaving the clerk still carefully holding the sword, Chen followed with a slight smile. The person he needed to meet had finally appeared. Everything was unfolding exactly according to his plan. The man's identity was gradually revealed. Dao Cheng, leader of the Mithril Guild. A big fish had finally taken the bait. In Mithril Exchange's VIP room, manager Theo Cheng sat across from Chen Si. On the table lay a precious S-grade weapon, and Theo Cheng asked how much Chen intended to sell it for. Chen Si remained as calm as ever. He casually stated the price, $1 million. The answer stunned Theo Cheng. He couldn't believe an S-tier piece of equipment could be priced so low. Theo Cheng hastily explained that even A-grade items were already worth millions, and this S-grade sword should be worth tens of millions on the market. Enough to spark a bloody fight. But Chen Si immediately cut him off, saying he didn't intend to sell it. He only wanted to use it as collateral to borrow $1 million for 1 month. This proposal made Theo Cheng look at Chen differently. A college student with such bold, mature thinking? Theo Cheng assessed silently. Clearly Chen didn't want to lose the sword. He was far smarter than he looked, maybe a wealthy heir hiding his identity or a mysterious genius. Either way, he wasn't ordinary. Chen Si continued with terms. He would repay the principal after 1 month and was willing to pay an extra 10% interest the following month to Theo Cheng. Seeing this as a special deal, Theo Cheng asked his assistant Xiao Li to step outside so the two could speak privately. With only the two of them left in the room, Theo Cheng began to piece together the information. He realized Chen was studying at National Awakening University, where final-year students were about to take an important graduation exam. Theo Cheng's mind worked fast. That exam would take place in exactly 1 month. And the prize for first place was $1 million, matching perfectly the amount and term Chen proposed. A knowing smile appeared on the seasoned manager's face as he gradually understood the young man's plan. Theo Cheng looked Chen Si straight in the eye and asked if he was certain he'd win the upcoming exam. Chen didn't answer. He simply stared back in silence. Theo Cheng pointed out that if Chen could wait another month to receive the prize, Bringing a rare item as collateral for cash right now suggested he was in an extremely urgent situation. Theo Ching's smile deepened, his eyes revealing clear interest in this promising young partner. Instead of 1 million, Theo Ching decided to up the stakes and offered to lend Chen $1.5 million in cash immediately. He stood, extended his hand, and promised not to charge any interest in the first month. Consider it the start of a long-term relationship. Despite the offer exceeding his expectations, Chen Si remained composed as if he'd anticipated everything. Theo Ching vowed to keep all details of today's transaction confidential and hoped Chen would prioritize mithril exchange for future deals. Chen smiled slightly. He was genuinely impressed by Theo Ching's observation skills and handling of the situation. It wasn't surprising that mithril would later become the world's leading exchange. They shook hands. Chen understood that to overthrow the Demon King Wrath, personal strength alone wouldn't be enough. He needed strong allies like this. The handshake officially confirmed a new alliance had been formed. A scroll of magic appeared in midair, glowing bright gold as Chen placed his hand on it to sign the binding contract. The contract completed, and a transfer notification immediately popped up on Chen's phone. $1.5 million had landed in his account. Theo Ching smiled and congratulated him. Theo Ching curiously asked what Chen planned to use in the graduation exam now that he'd pawned his strongest weapon, and even offered to lend him some gear temporarily. He frankly said the exchange currently had no spare S-grade items, but plenty of A and B-grade equipment for Chen to choose from. Chen Si merely smiled and declined, then raised his hand and summoned another sword that radiated a brilliant purple light. The sword was identical to the S-grade weapon he just handed to Theo Ching. Seeing that, both Theo Ching and Xiao Li were frozen, eyes wide in disbelief that Chen possessed two extremely rare S-grade weapons. Chen casually turned his back and walked away, leaving the two of them stunned by such a strange and enigmatic young genius. To celebrate the unexpectedly successful deal, Theo Ching decided to promote Xiao Li to supervisor immediately, causing her to leap for joy. Stepping out of the building, Chen paused for a moment as he remembered an important errand he still needed to run. He told himself he had to buy something before going home. Chen hailed a yellow taxi and quickly left the crowded district. His destination was the Shangchong County long-distance bus terminal, full of hurried people coming and going. Seeing the busy traffic, Chen couldn't help but recall his bitter previous life, when his family had endured long periods of hardship. Back then, although he had graduated, he hadn't awakened, so no guild wanted to take in someone as useless as him. Memories returned of Chen having to work as a deliveryman, running everywhere each day just to earn the pennies to pay the monthly rent. The two siblings had to live in extreme hardship to survive. At that time, Si Yun was still a sensible girl, happily telling her brother she'd found a tutoring job to help the family. Chen could never forget the moment Si Yun held the acceptance letter from the International Central Academy of Arts with eyes full of regret. Worried about the family's financial burden, she tore up her own dream and lied that the school was too far away and she only wanted to stay close to her brother. Chen painfully realized that poverty had stolen his sister's future. Back in the present, Chen stood in the terminal checking his phone, calculating that it was time for Si Yun to get off the bus. Suddenly, a plaintive, "Big brother," rang out. Si Yun was running toward him, scolding him loudly for waiting at the entrance instead of the exit like always. Si Yun had just gotten off the bus with a large golden suitcase at her side. She sighed and complained that the two of them would be broke after paying this month's rent. Seeing his sister standing there in the flesh, Chen Si froze. It had been 7 years since he'd last seen that familiar figure. 7 years of regret and suffering from his previous life. Unaware of the surge of emotions in her brother, Si Yun kept waving and called out loudly, asking Chen to hurry over to help her with the heavy luggage. Seeing her brother standing like a statue, Si Yun stepped closer, waved her hand in front of his face, and irritably asked what Chen was thinking about. Before his sister could finish, Chen Si suddenly stepped forward and hugged her tightly, as if trying to make up for all the suffering they had endured. Si Yun opened her eyes wide in surprise at the sudden action, while Chen had only one thought. After 7 long years, he had finally met his sister again. A satisfied smile appeared on Chen's face. In this life, he vowed to protect Si Yun's smile at all costs and never allow any tragedy to happen again. But his hug was so tight Si Yun nearly choked. She immediately punched him hard in the stomach to break free. yelling in irritation at his excessive enthusiasm. Chen hurriedly took the bag and gave an embarrassed laugh as Si-Yun kept asking if he'd been having psychological problems lately or if some girl had just dumped him. The two siblings chatted happily as they walked home. Si-Yun kept recounting the troublesome trip she had just endured to make it back in time for the graduation exam. Watching his cheerful sisters back ahead of him, Chen felt a new source of strength welling up inside. This time, things would definitely be different. He silently vowed to use all his strength and money to give Si-Yun a full life, never letting her suffer again. However, the joy didn't last long before danger quietly appeared. In a dark alley on the way home, a group of men waited in ambush. The gang's leader, with striking pink hair and a cigarette dangling from his mouth, prepared with his cronies to rush out as soon as Chen Si appeared. Chang Di curled a malicious, crooked smile and muttered that today he'd teach Chen a lesson he wouldn't forget for daring to offend him. In a hidden corner, the student council's gang of pupils were discussing an ambush plan. One lackey looked worried and asked if this might go too far. Chang Di inhaled a drag of his cigarette, his face full of contempt. He said he just wanted to teach that lowlife E-rank a lesson for his insolent attitude. In the hunter's mind, the image of Chen Si with blazing red eyes and the warning not to bother him again still haunted him. The henchmen carried baseball bats, ready to knock the target out so he couldn't take the graduation exam in 2 weeks. Gang thug number 3 of the Yun faction, Chang Di, broke into a manic grin. He was confident he was one of the strongest Yun fighters at the school and today Chen would pay. Far ahead, Chen Si and his younger sister were walking slowly down a quiet street. Completely unaware they were being followed, Si-Yun sipped her drink and looked at her brother with suspicion. She felt he had been unusually tense lately. She asked if Chen was worried about the graduation exam. Since he rarely showed emotion, Si-Yun began chattering to encourage her brother, advising him to try harder because life was long and opportunities would keep coming. She even hummed a cheerful tune, saying that as long as he believed in himself, things would get better. Chen Si smiled faintly at his sister's thoughtfulness. She had noticed the change in him the moment they reunited. He said he was fine, but Si-Yun only replied with a skeptical look. Thinking he was trying to keep up male pride, Si-Yun continued teasing her brother, saying he was getting old and starting to build emotional walls. The siblings turned into a dark alley, their figures gradually disappearing under the dim streetlight. The thugs followed closely behind. They noticed Chen was with a girl, and that there were no surveillance cameras here. Chang Di smiled coldly behind his mask, thinking silently that today was the perfect chance to strike. Suddenly, Chen Si stopped. His gaze turned razor-sharp as he sensed the presence of enemies. He recognized the familiar scent of the student council members hiding behind the rubble. One by one they stepped out, surrounding the siblings with fierce, confident faces. Chen calmly took out a pair of wireless earbuds. Paying no attention to the approaching crowd, he gently put the earbuds on Si-Yun and said he'd just found a great song he wanted her to hear. Si-Yun blinked and asked since when her brother liked music, but she obediently followed along. The girl smiled and closed her eyes, thinking music might help her understand her brother's mood better. While his sister was lost in the melody, Chen Si's eyes turned ice cold. A blue energy flared in Chen's eyes, signaling the awakening of a terrifying power. Opposite them, the ambush group, ranging from E to D ranks, stood led by a smug-looking Chang Di. The song in Si-Yun's ear spoke of decay and final farewells. Completely at odds with her calm expression, the thugs lunged at Chen Si with weapons in hand, creating a chaotic scene. Chen recalled his past life, when he lost his last relative in 2160 and could only reunite after 7 long years. White-gold electrical sparks began to cover Chen Si's body. His fury erupted because they dared ruin this reunion. He coldly demanded to know how they could dare intrude on such a precious moment between him and his family. A lightning-powered kick was launched, shattering the lead thug. Blood sprayed as his body was sent flying by the tremendous impact. The entire group was hurled into the air like tattered puppets under Chen's overwhelming power. Si-Yun kept moving, lost in the gentle melody. Completely unaware the massacre was happening behind her, Chen Si moved like a ghost streaked with lightning, launching a barrage of punches at speeds the naked eye couldn't follow. Loud explosions rang out each time an enemy was felled, dust and debris flying everywhere. He grabbed a thug's arm, his gaze cold and merciless as he prepared to deliver the finishing blow. A dry cracking sound echoed, The man's arm snapped completely under the pressure of the golden electricity. He screamed in agony as he felt his bones being crushed. A direct punch from Chen distorted the thug's face. Blood spraying everywhere. An energy blast erupted, sending the remaining attackers flying away like trash. Chang Di stood frozen, sweat pouring down his face. He trembled as he watched, then screamed in terror. What the hell is happening to this guy? Chen Si lunged forward like a bolt of golden lightning. The attackers screamed in fear, unable to comprehend how a student could possess such terrifying power. A direct hit smashed the enemy to pieces. His speed was so fast the opponent couldn't react or raise a hand to defend. The sound of bones breaking continued through the night. Electric force covered Chen's hands, turning every strike into a disaster for whoever was hit. Chang Di clenched the knife in his hand, eyes wide with fear. He couldn't believe the power Chen was displaying before him. He gritted his teeth, sweat streaming down his face. Chang Di still shouted loudly, trying to reassure himself that he was the strongest Yun-class killer. He hurled desperate curses and lunged at Chen Si like a madman, clinging to the faint hope that recklessness might turn the tide. But Chen Si was simply too fast. A lethal blow pierced every defense, sending fresh blood spraying into the air. Chang Di was blasted away like a torn sack, his body slamming hard into the crumbling brick walls around them, giving his foes no chance to rest. Chen pressed on with terrifying speed, like an electromagnetic storm intent on crushing everything in its path. A punch from above came down with crushing force, driving the enemy deep into the rubble in utter helplessness. A shockwave exploded at the impact point, thick dust and smoke enveloping the dark alley corner. As the dust gradually cleared, Chen Si appeared standing coldly atop Chang Di's battered body. He repeated his earlier warning, "Never bother me again." Chen's eyes turned a blazing red, full of murderous intent. He looked down at the defeated man and said coldly, "Don't you understand what that means?" Chang Di lay collapsed on the ground, blood all over him. He realized in horror that his ribs were shattered and his legs had completely lost feeling after Chen's blow. Chen coldly pressed the serrated blade against the loser's mouth. His gaze never wavered as he issued a warning: if the man made another sound, he would kill him instantly. Staring into Chen's blazing red eyes, Chang Di trembled as he realized the other was entirely serious. The terrifying murderous aura suffocated him. Death felt very near. Chen's figure was shrouded in a frightening red-black smoke. The bully sank into despair, unable to understand how an ordinary student could possess such cruelty and a terrifying will to kill. He bent down close, his eyes turning a threatening red. Chen demanded that he remember every word he was about to say. Among the dark alley with henchmen lying scattered on the ground, Chen turned his back and walked away. He warned that if any of them dared to show up in front of his sister again, the price they'd pay would be all their lives. The sharp blade slid lightly across the bully's mouth as a final reminder. Chen affirmed he would make each of them disappear forever if they dared repeat their crimes. His face was cold as ice, his red eyes fixed on the guilty man. A short but pressure-filled question left the opponent with no will to resist. The leader nodded repeatedly through tears and blood. His earlier arrogance had completely vanished, replaced only by utter fear. Chen tossed the knife to the ground and calmly left the scene, leaving the defeated man collapsed behind him. Meanwhile, in another corner of the neighborhood, Si Yun sat quietly listening to music through her headphones. The melancholy melody about loneliness choked her, and tears fell unconsciously. She couldn't understand why the song made her hurt so much. It seemed a very deep sadness was covering her mind. A few days had passed since she last saw her brother. Si Yun felt Chen had just been through something incredibly heavy, completely different from his usual calm. Seeing her brother's familiar figure, Si Yun immediately called out. She was both happy and worried he might be about to pull some excessive prank on her. Chen waited for his sister with a gentle smile. In his hand was an elegant red box he was about to give her. He opened the box and handed Si Yun a sparkling golden pen. In a warm voice he said this was a special gift just for her. Si Yun was so astonished she was speechless when she realized it was the latest version of the magic holographic pen, the luxury item she'd always dreamed of. The joy didn't last long before worry quickly appeared. Si Yun knew very well the pen cost over 10,000 yuan, an amount far too large given the siblings' current situation. She lowered her head to look at the expensive gift, her eyes growing red with worry. Si Yun softly suggested he return the pen because she feared he would be under too much pressure. Seeing his sister before him, Chen silently tightened his fist behind his back. He vowed that in this life he would never let her give up her small dreams again. The image of the dark alley flashed in his mind as a reminder of the world's cruelty. Chen resolved to do everything to protect Si Yun's peace. After her brother encouraged her, Si Yun began using the pen to draw glowing fish floating in the air. The pen's magical holographic technology made her smile radiantly. At a simple dinner of instant noodles, Chen ate heartily. He kept praising his sister's cooking, making the atmosphere warmer than usual. Even so, Si Yun couldn't stop worrying about money. She reminded him they still had monthly rent to worry about and shouldn't spend too extravagantly. Chen calmly said he had already paid the rent for the whole year in advance. The unexpected news left Si Yun stunned with surprise. To put his sister at ease, he lied that he and a friend had just started a small business and earned a decent sum. As he said it, he scratched his head awkwardly to hide the truth. Si Yun looked at him with suspicion. Since she knew her brother was terrible at lying, she was certain he was hiding a very big secret. Her gaze sharpened as she studied every expression on his face. This sudden change still left her baffled. Seeing Chen's bright smile, Si Yun suddenly realized it had been a long time since she'd seen him so happy and at ease. She softly reminded him not to push himself too hard no matter what happened. To her, his safety was the most important thing. Chen smiled and nodded, quietly grateful for his sister's sincere concern. The scene shifted to a high-end office where people were discussing the condition of the bully Chang Di. His injuries were so severe that even the best doctors had no way to fully heal him. Cole Gong, the academy's prodigy, stood before a giant aquarium with a pensive expression. He couldn't believe Chang Di had been foolish enough to pick a fight with someone as dangerous as Chen. Ling Yu lounged on the sofa and calmly said that with such a pathetic state, Si Chen would surely miss the upcoming graduation exam. Cole Gong coldly dismissed that as unimportant. He didn't need weaklings slowing his team down. At that moment, Gong Zhan, the academy's career director, entered the room with a serious face to start the meeting. He mentioned the name Chen, who was becoming the focus of the academy leadership due to unusual displays of power. Gong Zhan confirmed the internal ranking results. Chen had indeed achieved rank C. It was a huge shock because he was the only student currently ranked above Cole Gong. Cole Gong narrowed his eyes. A golden glint of discomfort and rivalry flashed as he heard his top position was being threatened by an unknown. Gong Zhan reminded Cole Gong that his father had invited the Alliance vice president to watch the graduation exam. He demanded that no one be allowed to steal his glory. Then he turned to speak with his granddaughter Ling Yu. Gong Zhan wanted her prepared to take the vacant spot on Cole Gong's team if any incident occurred. Ling Yu smiled enigmatically, as if she had anticipated the changes that would occur in the fateful exam ahead. Cole Gong calmly brushed off Director Gong Zhan's worries. With an arrogant look, he suggested the director was making things more serious than necessary. He smirked and confidently asked back whether Gong Zhan really thought he'd used all his power in the previous ranking test. Cole Gong's gaze settled on the aquarium, where a small predatory hunt was unfolding. He was certain the upcoming real combat exam would reveal the truth. Cole Gong's face, full of ambition, appeared beneath the deep green water. He would use the exam to prove to the entire academy who the true strongest was. The one atop them all. It was 11 p.m. at the men's dormitory of National Awakener University. In the quiet night, Chen stood under the shower washing away the fatigue from a long day of training. He had just completed a 100 kilometers run with heavy weights. An extremely harsh training regimen. With money temporarily settled, Chen began planning his real post-graduation strategies. His next target was the championship and the 1 million yuan prize in the graduation exam. That money was necessary to cover his living expenses and repay his debt to Theo Ching. Chen understood very well that his relationship with Theo Ching was crucial. He needed to keep his word because he would require this businessman's help many times in the future. Lying on his bed, Chen quietly stared at the ceiling. Less than a month remained until the decisive exam, and little time was left for final preparations. His eyes grew cold, filled with unshakable determination. Chen knew he needed to level up several more times, and the violent hunger system had begun to activate. Shortly after, he appeared before a colossal tower brimming with a gloomy aura called the Tower of Darkness. Its bizarre architecture stretched up into a red sky, radiating an utterly terrifying pressure. Chen slowly climbed the stone steps leading into the forbidden area. Each step showed the caution of a battle-hardened warrior. The system displayed his latest evaluation results. Even his weakest class, Gravehound King, had reached mid-tier rank C, enough to send shockwaves through the academy. However, his true power lay in the S-rank class, Abyssal Fiend. Even the system couldn't measure it accurately because its potential exceeded normal limits. Though he still couldn't fully control it, Chen's other classes remained a great mystery, with stats and ranks yet to be determined, awaiting discovery in the future. In his hand appeared the SSS grade, Time Rift Key. Shining brilliantly, it was the only item capable of opening the gate into the mysterious Tower of Darkness. When the key was activated, a blinding light erupted, beginning to tear the surrounding space apart, accompanied by a deafening roar. A gigantic spatial gate appeared with bewitching purple vortices. Chen stood before the portal to an unknown land, wondering what awaited him inside that legendary tower. The power from the gate exploded violently, sweeping everything around and beginning to pull his body deep into the vortex. Chen's eyes widened in astonishment as the surrounding space changed completely in the blink of an eye. Chen had just set foot in the Fallen Star Wasteland, a mysterious land deep within the Dreadspire. As soon as he arrived, he felt an invisible pressure weighing heavily over his entire body. Bang! The tremendous gravity sent Chen crashing down, his knees slamming hard into the cold ground. This place had gravity up to 10 g, 10 times normal, making even breathing difficult. The exit had completely vanished. Chen understood he had to defeat the floor boss to escape. In the distance, a massive paw slowly approached, signaling the enemy's imminent appearance. It was the Phantom Lion, a B-rank monster with a colossal body like a moving nebula. Sensing danger, Chen immediately requested the system to switch his class to prepare for battle. First, he used the level 8 Thunder Assassin class, intending to finish the fight quickly with extreme speed. The lion roared and lunged straight ahead, moving so fast it left afterimages behind. Chen hurriedly dodged to the side, but his legs felt heavy as if bound with lead. He quickly realized his speed had been completely suppressed by the crushing gravity. If he didn't end it soon, he'd surely exhaust himself. A lightning-infused thrust was launched, but the system kept reporting errors. Critical strike failed. Paralysis effect failed. Chen's gaze wavered. The immense gravity had completely skewed his attack trajectory. The monster immediately seized the opportunity, pouncing on Chen and slamming him into the ground with overwhelming force. In this 10G environment, all the assassin class's advantages were nearly useless. While the lion moved with extreme agility, with no other choice, Chen decided to switch to the strongest class he possessed. A sinister energy enveloped him. The level 10 Purgatory Rakshasa class was officially activated. Chen's strength and stamina stats surged, and he unlocked the ultimate skill called Triple Phase Catastrophic Gravity. He immediately charged into melee. Chen knew that in these attrition battles, the warrior class was the appropriate choice. A punch cloaked in dark energy and lightning slammed down hard onto the Phantom Lion's head. The gravity control skill began raising pressure to an extreme 600%. With his power amplified 60-fold, Chen concentrated all his might into this decisive strike. The monster only had time to widen its eyes in horror at a power beyond its imagination. A pillar of blazing pink light erupted, swallowing the beast and the surrounding area. Super heavy mode pulverized everything into dust. The ground cracked under the terrifying pressure. In the midst of the giant crater, Chen lay panting. The B-rank monster had been completely destroyed. The surge of experience pushed Chen to level 11. He realized each star on a class card was the key to increasing power. Compared to the Thunder Assassin's 9 stars, the Purgatory Rakshasa's 11 stars provided far superior enhancement. Despite the victory, Chen remained pensive. He had to use nearly all his strength to defeat a single B-rank monster. Chen understood his two current classes were still insufficient to surpass the limits of higher-tier creatures. But at that moment, Chen noticed something extremely unusual. Why hadn't the system shown the "can be devoured" marker on this monster's corpse? Even the gate to the next floor hadn't appeared as he had expected. A feeling of unease rose instantly. Chen anxiously looked up at the black sky above. A massive black hole suddenly spun violently, tearing the space right above his head. From the deep darkness, Dozens of glowing eyes coldly stared down at the prey below. Chen was shocked to realize the monster he had struggled to defeat was not actually the true master of this place. Dozens of other phantom lions began to dive down. What Chen had just killed turned out to be only a low-tier monster. They quickly surrounded Chen from all sides, giving him no time to rest. Sharp claws tore flesh apart, blood spraying as Chen was frenziedly attacked by the pack. Amid the intense pain, the Rakshasa's words echoed in his head. Once the door opens, what awaits ahead is endless suffering. The purple monster roared again, opening its massive maw with fangs sharp enough to devour everything. Chen gritted his teeth and endured, his face bloodied but his eyes burning with determination as he faced the seemingly unbeatable enemy. Suddenly, Chen awoke. He bolted upright in bed, breathing rapidly and drenched in sweat. He sat silently in the quiet dorm room, trying to erase the terrifying memories of the battle. The pain seemed to linger. The sensation of torn muscles and shattered bones was frighteningly real. Chen understood there would never be shortcuts to becoming stronger, and this difficult journey had only just begun. Friday, May 20th, 2157. In the Great Hall of the National Awakening University, an important ceremony was underway. Hundreds of students had gathered to hear announcements about the graduation exam and the formation of combat teams. Whispers filled the auditorium about major changes to this year's evaluation rules. Rumors spread that high-ranking officials from the Alliance Council would personally observe this exam. Chen listened silently to the new rules. Each team must have at least 5 members, and at least one must be high E rank or above. Many students wondered whether the change aimed to increase the exam's difficulty and drama. Gong Zhan announced that ranking information for all students had been sent directly into each person's identification ring. Students immediately checked their devices as ranking boards began to appear in midair. The list displayed many familiar names alongside their corresponding ranks. Suddenly, a male student shouted in shock when he saw the unbelievable information on the electronic board. The words read clearly, Chen ranked only low E rank, the lowest tier. The entire hall turned to look at him in astonishment. No one understood why such a promising person had such a low rank. Murmurs broke out. People remembered that Chen had previously reached C rank. Many began to mock, saying his Heart of Demons test had truly failed and all his power had vanished. They regretted wanting to join Chen's team. Chen stood motionless among the crowd, his cold gaze hiding calculations as he looked at the fabricated ranking. Those around him began to jeer, believing no team would want to accept a useless person like him now. Cole Gong looked at Chen with disdain, quietly pleased that his rival no longer qualified to compete. Above in the stands, the ceremony organizers watched with solemn, inscrutable expressions. Hidden behind his thick mustache, Gong Zhan smiled maliciously, proud that his plan to undermine Chen had succeeded in its first stage. He wanted to use this opportunity to teach Chen about power and the nature of humanity, making him unqualified even to take the graduation exam. The entire auditorium immediately erupted into chaos when the announcement rang out, urging all students to form teams quickly before time ran out. The crowd quickly swarmed around Cole Gong, repeatedly chanting his name. Everyone wanted to join the team of the powerful student council president. Pleading voices rang out everywhere. Some bragged they'd been in the student council for 3 years. Some promised to do all the errands for the team, and some insisted their class's therapy specialization would be a valuable asset. A member of Cole Gong's team had to shout for everyone to be quiet and step back, since their team had only one spot left. Half an hour passed quickly, and the wristbands began to glow, signaling that teams were complete. The atmosphere in the auditorium grew extremely lively. Teams kept cheering each other on for the upcoming exam. Meanwhile, Chen's group still stood alone in a corner. Marlon Ma sighed in frustration. He said he'd asked everywhere but no one wanted to join their team. The situation was dire because the group only had 4 people. If things continued like this, they wouldn't even qualify for the graduation exam. Marlon Ma pushed up his glasses and muttered in confusion, not understanding why Chen's ranking had been dropped to the very bottom. Chen silently observed the surroundings. To register, each team needed at least 5 people and at least 1 member with a high-level E rank. He quickly realized his dorm was being targeted deliberately. He understood very well that this combat exam was the only chance for students to prove their abilities. If they wanted a better future, they had to achieve high team results. In the final test, the number of monsters in the dungeon would change based on each team's number of members. Therefore, Having more teammates didn't necessarily make it easier to score high. Chen told himself that even if he couldn't join a strong team like Cole Gong's, no one would want to take on a low-ranking member as dead weight. The electronic board clearly showed Marlon Ma, Weston Xiang, and Chen all at low level E. The three bottom-ranked students also shared the same dorm room, a truly dire situation. Suddenly, a loud voice called Weston Xiang from afar. Another group approached, inviting Weston to join because they were short on people. They even mocked that he surely wouldn't want to be stuck with those three useless E-rank guys. If he didn't join, he might lose his chance to take the exam. Chen watched everything quietly. He knew that if things went on like this, low-level E students like them would be completely ignored, and the ultimate result would be being regrettably excluded from the graduation exam. Weston Xiang was silent for a few seconds, then softly apologized, but then he firmly insisted that the dorm had long promised to form a team together. He would never abandon his roommates. The other guy immediately clicked his tongue in contempt, saying Weston was just the chosen filler, yet still pretended to refuse. He cursed him ungrateful and told him not to act superior. The team status board kept changing. Almost all D-rank students had already found teams. Marlon Ma looked up at the screen in panic. Almost everyone already had a full team. Only a few high-level E students were left without groups. But no one cared about their teams because they were still missing a member. Chen lifted his head and stared coldly toward the stands. While Marlon Ma was still so tense he was sweating. He thought privately of Director of Public Affairs Gong Zan. He shared the same family name as Cole Gong, so it was highly likely they both belonged to the Gong clan. An important graduation exam had been suddenly changed like this, and his true ranking had been deliberately lowered so no one would dare form a team with him. Chen began to wonder whether he was considered a major threat to Cole Gong. Indeed, those with power could do whatever they pleased, but Chen was determined to take this exam at all costs. If the others had openly targeted him like this, he no longer needed to keep tolerating it. The system began activating the class transition process. The system announced that the class transition was complete. Golden bolts of lightning began to envelop Chen's body with great might. He thought to himself that he no longer needed to keep up appearances. Gong Zan sat above with a calm expression. While Chen realized his power was not limited to this exam alone, Marlon Ma jumped and shouted, asking Chen what he intended to do. Weston Xiang likewise showed clear astonishment at the powerful electricity radiating around him. At Awakening University there was a special tradition. Students were allowed to challenge each other to one-on-one duels at any time to hone their combat skills. The crowd began to whisper, curious who Chen was aiming for. It was an extremely bold move, but also the most direct way to prove one's true strength to everyone. Usually, when faced with such a sudden challenge, most students would choose to avoid it. Chen stared directly at Cole Gong. Still, he knew that Name would never accept a challenge from a low-ranked nobody like him. Cole Gong's gaze remained cold and arrogant, while Chen thought to himself that beating that guy would be enough. With eyes blazing with determination, Chen believed that if he won, many people would surely volunteer to join his team to earn high scores. Just then, a female voice suddenly called from the entrance, naming Chen and asking if his team was still missing members. Chen turned and was surprised to see Ling Yu standing there. She smiled and said she also wanted to take this year's graduation exam with them. Ling Yu confidently said she had ranked D since middle school, so she certainly wouldn't be a burden to the team. Marlon Ma and those around him were so shocked they swore out loud. No one could believe Chen knew a beautiful genius like Ling Yu. A male student beside Cole Gong shouted in panic, unable to believe his cousin would say such a thing. In the stands, Director Gong Zan was so shocked he nearly choked when he witnessed this unexpected turn. Ling Yu's appearance instantly threw the auditorium into an uproar. Some questioned why a genius from Shanghai, an exchange student, would want to join this school's exam and team up with trash like Chen. Her mysterious identity only fueled more speculation. Gong Zan's anger showed on his face. He loudly called out to Ling Yu and reminded her that as an exchange student she had no right to participate in this graduation exam. He couldn't understand why she sided with an outsider. Gong Zan continued that Ling Yu had not taken a placement test since transferring to the school, and he had never received any report confirming her current rank. Therefore, allowing her to join the exam would be completely against academy regulations. At that moment, a low but powerful voice declared that Director Gong Zan was entirely correct. Everyone startled to see Principal Stephen Yuan had appeared without anyone noticing. A strong purple energy aura around him shook the whole auditorium. Gong Zan immediately turned pale and asked in a trembling voice why the principal was also here. The presence of the Academy's most powerful figure instantly made the atmosphere extremely tense. Stephen Yuan looked straight at Ling Yu and reminded her she was only a short-term exchange student. So why did she want to get involved in this complicated situation? Chen stood watching everything. He was secretly astonished because he had always thought the principal belonged to the warrior class. Yet now the man displayed instantaneous teleportation ability at an extremely high level. Stephen Yuan turned to Ling Yu and said her participation would be unfair. Since the real meaning of the graduation exam was for students to prove their own abilities. Ling Yu only smiled faintly and said that was indeed a pity. Chen narrowed his eyes at the two before him. A flash of blue light flickered in his vision as he tried to observe their ranks. But he failed completely. Both Stephen Yuan and Ling Yu gave off an uncanny, inscrutable feeling. Around them was like an invisible mist concealing their true power. Gong Zan immediately began to flatter, saying the principal was absolutely right and that strict adherence to rules was what kept the Academy's reputation intact. He hoped Stephen Yuan would side with him to disqualify Chen's team from the exam, but Stephen Yuan promptly retorted. He declared that the goal of the National Awakening University was to train the finest awakened and to create the perfect stage for them to showcase their talents. In order to maintain the world's talent pool, he emphasized that the graduation combat exam was a long-standing tradition and the most important turning point in every student's life. The entire auditorium fell utterly silent to hang on the principal's every word. With a stern face and a long scar across his cheek, Stephen Yuan coldly countered that if students lost this opportunity due to special circumstances, how could the Academy preserve its reputation? Each of his words felt like a slap to Gong Zan's face. Gong Zan began to break out in a cold sweat. He wondered whether the old man was hinting at him, and whether the principal had discovered his covert rule changes meant to squeeze Chen out. Normally, Stephen Yuan never bothered with such petty matters. He started to suspect that Stephen Yuan and Ling Yu were staging a ruse together, all to help Chen. Things were beginning to slip beyond the Gong family's control. Gong Zan tried to reassure himself that the situation wasn't yet dire and that he didn't need to confront the old man directly. Still, his mind remained full of schemes and plotting. He glanced at Cole Gong and thought to himself that this was about as far as he could go. All the high-ranked students had already formed teams, while Chen could only join with the three bottom-ranked guys. Cole Gong would surely win easily. Stephen Yuan smiled cryptically as he watched Gong Zan forced to bow in agreement. The power gap between them was now unmistakable. Gong Zan had no choice but to admit the principal was right. On behalf of the administration, Gong Zan officially announced that teams with fewer than 5 members or without a high-level E member would still be allowed to apply for the exam. The door to the graduation exam would remain open to all students. The auditorium immediately erupted into loud applause. Chen's group's wristbands all glowed blue at once with the notification team formed. At last, their effort had succeeded. Marlon Ma and the roommates cheered with joy. Now they could take the exam without fear of disqualification. The whole group shouted in unison for Chen to be team leader. While everyone was excited, Chen remained calm. Stephen Yuan stood beside Ling Yu and admitted that her interest in Chen was greater than he'd expected. An intriguing confrontation seemed about to begin. On one side stood Cole Gong with the strongest lineup in the Academy's history. On the other stood Chen and his 3 lowest-ranked roommates. The stark contrast left everyone eager to see the outcome. Principal Stephen Yuan stared at the screen before him. He wondered which type of dungeon the two teams would choose and how many points they would ultimately score. Expectation showed clearly in his eyes. The organizer quickly announced that after a team is formed, the captain has the right to select the target dungeon via their personal electronic board. A ding sounded along with the notification sent. The teacher froze in astonishment. He hadn't expected a newly formed team to choose a dungeon so quickly. The auditorium immediately grew noisy as people realized Chen's team had completed their selection. Many students screamed in horror when they saw the choice appear on the screen. They couldn't believe Chen had dared pick that. Some even swore in shock. Marlon Ma sprinted forward in panic and shouted at Chen, asking if he was crazy. He kept telling Chen to cancel the selection immediately. Those nearby gaped in disbelief at the reckless decision. Despite everyone's attempts to stop him, Chen stayed silent. A resolute pink light flashed in his eyes. Marlon's shout still rang in his ears. Do you know what you just picked? A true fight for survival awaited the team. The real-world graduation exam is the most important milestone for students, because it's the first time they're allowed to form a team to enter an actual dungeon. The goal is clear: kill monsters and defeat the dungeon boss to earn points. The scoring system is extremely strict. If the team clears 100% of the dungeon, they receive a maximum of 10 points. However, each remaining monster deducts 1 point. Defeating the dungeon boss grants an additional 20 points. There is also a time score. If the dungeon is cleared within 1 hour, the team gets the full 20 points. But every extra 5 minutes subtracts 1 point. The dungeon's difficulty determines the final score because it has its own multiplier. An F-rank dungeon only has a x 1.5 multiplier with a maximum score of 75. But if you dare choose an E-rank dungeon, the multiplier increases to x2, allowing a total score up to 100. The rewards for the top team are extremely attractive. All members of the team with the highest score will receive an invitation to join the Imperial Guild, the most powerful guild any Awakener could dream of. Not only that, the MVP title for the class comes with an even larger reward: direct appointment to a managerial position within the Imperial Guild and an immediate 1 million yuan in cash. In the tense atmosphere, students began whispering non-stop. Some mentioned the 90-point record of a former genius, who is now the leader of the Imperial Guild. Others worried that an E-rank dungeon is too dangerous and that at least 3 D-rank members would be needed to have any hope of survival. All eyes were now on Cole Gong, the genius with light-colored hair and a confident demeanor. The crowd believed his team was the only candidate capable of breaking the Academy's all-time high score. Suddenly, a notification chime for "request sent" rang out, breaking the silence. A bespectacled male student startled, not expecting a team to choose a dungeon so quickly. He stared at the screen, sweat running down his face as he realized the truth before him. He shouted in panic, "Oh my god, it's Chen's team. Did he really pick that?" The hall nearly exploded when the electronic board showed Chen's team had chosen a D-rank dungeon, the level no one had ever dared attempt before. An image of Chen with a calm expression appeared beside the notification that he had chosen a D-rank dungeon. The system was waiting for the remaining members to give final confirmation. Panic quickly spread throughout the hall. Some sarcastically asked whether Chen had pressed the wrong button, since no one had ever conquered a D-rank dungeon before. Marlon Ma, Chen's teammate, immediately rushed over, grabbed his shoulder tightly, and shouted, "Chen, are you crazy? Do you know what you just selected?" A long-haired member of the team nearly collapsed. He sat down on the floor, crying and blaming himself for being on a team with a madman like Chen. On each person's device a blazing red warning appeared. Team leader has chosen D-rank dungeon. Do you agree to participate? Another member trembled so badly with sweat dripping off him that he nervously asked whether it was still possible to quit the team now. Marlon Ma kept begging Chen to reconsider. He repeatedly emphasized how dangerous a D-rank dungeon was and that choosing it was tantamount to suicide. But Chen only nodded slightly, his expression unchanged. He looked straight at his teammates and firmly said that he had thought very carefully before making this decision. At that moment, another notification chime sounded. Cole Gong's team had also completed their dungeon selection. The system displayed, "All members have agreed. Team Cole Gong has successfully sent their request." As everyone expected, they too chose a D-rank dungeon to assert their top status. The hall shook once more. Shouts erupted everywhere. "Damn! Another team chose a D-rank dungeon. Oh my god. This year's exam is crazy." Cole Gong remained seated, arms crossed with a confident look and cold eyes. A member of his team even smiled with amusement, thinking this year's exam would surely be entertaining. The short-haired blonde girl with a small mole under her eye smirked sarcastically. She wondered why that mediocre team was trying to act strong. She coldly remarked that Chen's team completely lacked self-awareness about their strength, and they were only trying to attract attention since they'd finish at the bottom anyway. Another person burst into loud laughter. predicting that hastily assembled team would quickly fall apart. She even pretended to pity them with a look of delighted amusement. Meanwhile, Marlon Ma stood silently watching Chen. He wondered when the friend who had always relied on him throughout their school years had begun to project such powerful determination. Marlon pushed up his glasses slightly, his eyes showing the intense inner struggle over this important decision. Finally, Marlon decisively pressed the confirm button on his bracelet. He shouted to steel himself, "We've gone through 4 years together, so I'll stay by your side until the very end." Seeing Marlon decide, the long-haired guy wiped his tears and hit confirm as well. He told himself that since the team was already at the bottom of the rankings, a D rank or an F rank dungeon made little difference. At least he wanted to see for himself how terrifying a D rank dungeon could be. The last member, a dark-skinned boy in a striped shirt, still gritted his teeth and scowled at the others. He angrily yelled, feeling ridiculous that, as the dorm boss, he had become the last one to follow those two. But then he pressed confirm too. He decided to play it out to the end. Since graduation was near and there was nothing left to lose, the system chime rang again. All members have agreed. Team Chen has successfully sent the request. Chen's image appeared prominently on the central screen. Chen stood among his teammates. His gaze softened slightly when he saw they still trusted him. He spoke quietly. "Everyone." Chen looked the team squarely in the face and said in a low voice, "Sorry, I chose the D-rank dungeon because I want to win the MVP title." He admitted he had been selfish to drag the team into the most dangerous dungeon. But then a confident smile appeared on Chen's lips. He declared loudly, "So, let's get the highest score together. The MVP title will definitely be mine." Cole Gong's powerful voice echoed through the hall like a direct challenge to Chen. Chen turned his head back with a cold expression. While Marlon Ma behind him still couldn't hide his worry about this fierce competition, Cole Gong's eyes glowed an intense orange. He said coldly that in this school there could only be one true strongest. Ling Yu watched the tense scene and was slightly surprised. It was the first time she had seen Cole Gong show such seriousness and competitiveness toward an opponent. The covert rivalry between the two most prominent individuals had now officially erupted before the entire student body in the hall. In a corner, Principal Stephen Yuan, with a long scar across his face, smiled faintly with interest. He stroked his gray beard and mused that young people nowadays truly seemed fearless. Ling Yu propped her chin and thought, quietly judging Chen's almost excessive confidence. She felt that even if Chen truly ranked CA student, wanting to conquer a D-rank dungeon was still wildly unrealistic. The system clearly displayed, a D-rank dungeon has a score multiplier up to x3, allowing a maximum total of 150. But in return, its difficulty far exceeds that of an E-rank dungeon. Principal Stephen Yuan also looked doubtful. Based on Chen team's current abilities, he frankly judged that this was not a suitable choice for them. Stephen Yuan smiled with hidden meaning and reminded them that time was limited. The real combat exam would begin in just over a month, and that time frame was too short for major changes. Meanwhile, in the advanced simulation rooms, other students were frantically training with cutting-edge technology. The principal believed it was nearly impossible for Chen's team to overcome a D-rank dungeon in such a short time. The clock read 10:45 p.m. But inside the combat simulators the students continued to train with all their might. The principal sighed softly, hoping that by the exam day Chen's team could at least deliver a not-too-disastrous performance. Time flew, only 17 days remained before the exam. But instead of training in the modern simulators, Chen's team was forcing themselves to practice on the stadium field until they vomited and were utterly exhausted. Marlon Ma and the others lay sprawled on the grass, panting and complaining, "Hey, Chen, everyone else is in the elemental training rooms using simulators to fight monsters. Why are you making us do this?" Marlon wiped his sweat and listed a string of physical exercises: throwing balls, shuttle runs, sprints, and endurance runs. "This isn't a triathlon for the graduation exam. What good are any of these doing?" Chen stood there, his gaze cold and steady. He explained that training elemental skills in simulators now had limited value, since it's all just simulated images. He spoke in a low voice about the brutal reality inside dungeons. When you step into an unfamiliar dungeon facing monsters stronger than you've ever seen, when fear floods your mind, in that moment, what decides life or death won't be classroom theory. Chen asserted that in that fatal moment, It's not clumsy coordinated moves that keep you alive, but combat instinct. He emphasized that endurance, explosive strength, and reflex speed are what they're training now. All are meant to raise each person's combat instinct to the highest level. Chen insisted that the benefits of the school's simulation training are very limited. He believed the only way to gain real combat experience is to step directly into a real dungeon. His eyes flared with anger as he mentioned the class gap. But ordinary people like us don't have the right to enter real dungeons to train. Only those with status and privilege can do that. From the start, they weren't like us. They were born already holding every advantage in their hands. They are the class that controls resources and power, and those people will do everything to widen the gap between them and us, just to secure their positions forever. Chen bitterly realized that from birth, those people had stood in a completely different position than ordinary people. The privileged already owned what ordinary people must spend their whole lives pursuing. Things they could only dream of. A teammate of Chen lifted his head and asked anxiously, "So then, what can people like us who have nothing do?" The question was full of the self-doubt and despair of those at the lowest rung. Chen looked his teammates in the eye and gave the only answer: join the Imperial Guild. We'll smash that class barrier right in front of them. He affirmed that this graduation exam is the only opportunity for them to rise above those in the higher ranks. Marlon Ma listened, stunned, beginning to be swept up by the fire of determination in Chen's words, staring at his teammates with resolute eyes. Chen loudly promised he would do everything to keep this promise to them. He finished with a determined line, "We will definitely win." Only 15 days remained until the graduation exam. Chen wasted not a second. He threw himself into the Starfell Wastelands dungeon inside the Dark Tower to train, but due to the power gap, Chen was repeatedly killed by the monsters. He didn't stop, continuously entering the Dark Tower to challenge the beasts. 10 days left. Besides hunting monsters, Chen pushed himself to exhaustion running drills alongside other students on the academy track. Under the pale moonlight, lightning energy burst around Chen's body. He moved at incredible speed and wiped out the pack of monsters in an instant. Finally, the hard training days paid off. Cole Gong also didn't waste time, equipped with high-end weapons. He entered dungeons to hunt monsters and hone his combat skills. 3 days left. In the gym, Chen did push-ups with extremely heavy weights on his back. Sweat poured like rain, but his eyes were full of determination. Cole Gong stood amid roaring flames, his presence powerful as if preparing for the most important battle of his life. The final 2 days. A golden electric aura surrounded Chen as the system announced he had reached level 16 and awakened the Lightning Assassin class. 1 day left, his face smeared with monster blood. Chen's eyes still shone with resolve. He knew the real battle was only just beginning. June 17, 2157. A drone hovered in the air, broadcasting instructions for all candidates to prepare their equipment for the exam. Chen entered the testing center calmly. Behind him were Marlon Ma and the 2 other team members, after 15 days of training. Their physiques had improved greatly. A blue light erupted from the dungeon portal. The announcement echoed across the academy: the graduation exam has officially begun. In the administrative building, Stephen Yuan, the principal with a long scar across his face, stepped out to welcome special guests. Among them was Gong Lin, co-founder of the Imperial Guild and Cole Gong's father. He appeared with the bearing of a powerful leader. Students near the windows began to whisper. Everyone was stunned by the arrival of one of the most powerful figures among the Awakeners. But the surprise wasn't over when Gong Lin and the principal stepped forward to greet an even more distinguished guest at the car. Black-clad guards respectfully opened the car door. All eyes turned to the mysterious figure, prompting the 2 powerful men to personally welcome him. Stepping out of the car was Carl Cavendish, vice president of the Global Guild Federation. He slowly adjusted his watch, exuding an overwhelmingly dominant aura. The area instantly erupted in astonishment as the living legend of the Awakener world appeared at the academy. The presence of a high-ranking Federation official made the atmosphere hotter than ever. This was the one chance to change one's life if they caught those people's attention. Carl Cavendish and his entourage moved into the main hall to watch the live broadcast of the exam. Gong Zhan, an official with a thick mustache, stood to announce the competition rules for 184 students divided into 28 teams. The surveillance screen displayed the list of dungeons. Most teams chose F rank. Only a few dared pick E and D ranks. Sigrid, the sharp-tongued secretary of the Federation, frowned when she saw a team daring to enter the extremely dangerous D-rank dungeon. She warned that the D-rank dungeon was a death zone and questioned whether the academy really taught students to understand the level of danger. Gong Zan calmly replied that all risks had been announced in advance, and most E-rank students were capable of handling F-rank monsters. In an F-rank dungeon, candidate Jing Yang demonstrated extremely fast combat skills as she relentlessly attacked monsters. However, when facing a monster lord like the Razorfang Salamander, the situation immediately became much more difficult. If the F-rank dungeon was a basic test, the E-rank dungeon was like a true nightmare with an ominously dark atmosphere. Giant horn spiders crawled everywhere across the dense webbing. Each one was as strong as an F-rank monster lord. The students in the E-rank dungeon began to panic when they realized the swarm's power far exceeded what they'd imagined. Seeing that, Sigrid grew worried and pressed for the rescue plan if students fell into life-threatening situations. Gong Zan affirmed that students were the academy's most valuable asset, and the school always had timely rescue measures. Outside each dungeon gate, the Imperial Guild's armed forces were always on standby to respond if an incident occurred. Additionally, each candidate wore a special bracelet capable of instantly teleporting them to a safe zone. A male student screamed in panic and immediately activated the device as a monster prepared to pounce with a killing blow. With a single command, the candidate would be teleported out of the dungeon immediately. It was the last chance of survival for those who could no longer fight. Sigrid felt temporarily reassured and said she was eager to see how the teams that chose the D-rank dungeons would perform. Gong Zan narrowed his eyes at the screen, curious to see how long those reckless students could hold out. Beneath the thick white snow of Cloudwood Summit, Chen led his team into the perilous D-rank dungeon, but with his experience, Chen knew the real challenge only began with the first steps on this icy ground. The team set foot on Cloudwood Peak, an extremely dangerous D-rank dungeon. Amid the blinding snow and cutting cold, strange dark shapes began appearing on the large branches, making everyone shudder. They were wraithwing monkeys, assassin-type monsters with grotesque, terrifying appearances. They hung suspended from the trees, baring razor teeth and watching prey with eyes full of killing intent. Chen remained calm. He warned his teammates that these monsters moved extremely fast through the air and excelled at wide-area attacks, and he ordered everyone to always be on guard for sudden dives. From above, the dark shapes began to move, preparing to launch a bloody hunt. Chen's team looked tiny amid the deathland full of high-speed predatory monsters. As predicted, the wraithwing monkeys dove all at once like lightning tearing through the snow. Chen immediately called out a warning that the attack had begun. Thanks to Chen's timely command, Marlin and the teammate managed to dive aside. The streaks of light from the monsters' charges ripped the ground apart where they had just stood. Another person slammed hard to the side, feeling the biting gust of wind from the attack sweep past their body. The group crashed heavily into the snow but survived. Marlin could not believe they had dodged a D-rank monster's strike. Yet the deadly battle at Cloudwood Summit had truly only just begun. A monster just collapsed before Shang Zuo's stunned eyes. He stammered in disbelief, wondering if Chen had just acted. Chen stood amid streaks of blazing golden electricity surrounding his body. At his feet lay the bodies of 3 rank D monsters that had been destroyed in an instant. Chen turned to his teammates with a cold look. He said their current strength wasn't enough to deal with these monsters, so it was best to stand still and protect themselves. Having said that, Chen dashed off like a lightning bolt and told the group to leave the rest to him. At that moment, another winged ape suddenly lunged in a surprise attack. Shang Zuo couldn't react in time and only let out a terrified scream at the unexpected strike. The strong collision hurled Shang Zuo away, slamming him hard against a tree trunk in pain. Shang Zuo suddenly realized that all this time Chen had been training them only to increase their survival ability, never expecting them to truly join the fight. The feeling of being looked down on made him angry. After all, he used to be the boss in the dormitory. He refused to accept that now he had to completely rely on Chen to pass the graduation exam. Meanwhile, the pack of winged apes kept charging with their piercing screams, but Chen's speed was even faster than the monsters. His sword strikes, charged with golden electricity, tore through the air and felled them in moments. Shang Zuo stood frozen by the sight. He had doubted the rumors about Chen's power before, but now he had seen it all with his own eyes. Chen's displayed strength was far beyond that of a typical graduating student. Watching how Chen fought, Shang Zuo could only say he looked like a warrior who had survived countless real battles. Shang Zuo bowed his head, wondering when this teammate had become so dependable, while he felt left behind. At that moment, another monster suddenly charged in from behind. Riley Shang immediately shouted a loud warning for everyone to be careful. The winged ape leapt into the air and dove straight at the group with its dangerously sharp claws. Without hesitation, Shang Zuo focused all his strength into his arms to block the monster's attack. He shouted for Riley Shang and Marlon Ma, reminding them they couldn't always be a burden and rely entirely on Chen. Those words immediately awakened Riley and Marlon's fighting spirit, making them realize this wasn't just Chen's test. Shang Zuo roared with determination, "This is our graduation exam too." Riley Shang nodded in agreement with his teammate, his face more serious than ever. Riley Shang immediately used the skill, Flora Chant, Vine Lock, summoning vines and shouting a challenge at the monster. The vines quickly wrapped tightly around the winged ape's body, trying to lock its movements, but the monster let out a fierce roar and immediately tore the vines apart, leaving Riley Shang stunned. Riley exclaimed in shock as he saw the monster break free so quickly. His skill still didn't seem strong enough to hold it. At that moment, Marlon Ma immediately supported them with the skill, Cloud Chant, Frost Breeze, creating a cold breeze that enveloped the monster. The cold mist slowed the monster's movements. Marlon Ma quickly shouted for Riley to coordinate an attack right then. Riley Shang focused all his power and shouted, asking where the monster could possibly run now. The combined skill, Frost Breeze plus Vine Lock, erupted, freezing and binding the winged ape in place. Riley and Marlon called out for Shang Zuo to deliver the finishing blow. Got it. Shang Zuo immediately seized the rare opportunity while the monster was fully restrained. He shouted, "Taste this," then channeled all his power into his strongest skill, Burst Flame Bullet. A massive fire explosion erupted, swallowing the monster in a sea of blazing red flames. The winged ape screamed in agony within the flames, its body being burned by the intense heat. Shang Zuo swore in shock to see the creature so resilient and not yet down. He continued hurling fireballs at it. Despite being scorched and covered in wounds, the monster still lunged forward to attack. Riley Shang gritted his teeth and yelled that he couldn't hold it back any longer. Marlon Ma was nearly exhausted too, sweat streaming down his face as he struggled to maintain the frost magic. Shang Zuo roared with determination, preparing to use the last of his strength to unleash the final blow. In the observation room of the Awakening Academy, the atmosphere was extremely tense. Carl Cavendish pushed his glasses up slightly, his eyes thoughtful as he mentioned a name, Si Chen. "Ah, I remember now." The supervisor standing beside him just silently looked up at the screen. The light reflecting off his glasses made his face even colder and harder to read. Meanwhile, Stephen Yuan appeared noticeably more nervous. Sweat began to form on his brow as he watched the match intently through the camera. Suddenly he shouted to everyone, "Hey! Look, over there!" trying to draw everyone's attention to Cole Gong's team. On the screen the battle was being broadcast live. He pointed in astonishment when he saw the team that had chosen the D-rank dungeon had already made it halfway through. Sigrid adjusted her glasses, her sharp gaze noting that their coordination was excellent, just like a professional combat team. Carl smiled faintly with pleasure, thinking that this graduating class was truly outstanding. Stephen also smiled meaningfully. He believed this battle had only just begun and the exciting parts were still to come. In the D-rank dungeon Gloomvine Grotto, the noxious toadstools screamed continuously and swarmed from every direction. Flower Chanter, the blonde girl holding a white electric guitar, began to shake up the battlefield with her withering hymn skill, greatly reducing the monster's strength and speed. "Gather them," the Star Mage shouted, his hands glowing with purple energy as he prepared to unleash his next skill. Astral Fusion exploded, drawing all the monsters into one spot. A team member immediately yelled, "Captain!" Cole Gong quickly drew his sword, his eyes blazing with orange fire, locking onto the target ahead. With a powerful searing fracture stroke, he cleaved through the monsters in a massive burst of flames. Cole Gong calmly sheathed his sword, displaying the confident demeanor of a true C-rank flame soldier. He smiled wryly, thinking these monsters were no different from the ones he trained on at home. so fighting them had become second nature. The teammate beside him also grinned smugly, saying that knowing someone influential did make life a lot easier. The team continued to push deeper into the dungeon, determined to win and defeat the final boss. Meanwhile, atop Cloudwood, a fierce blizzard still howled, blocking Chen's group's progress. Chen led the group, his gaze cold and calm in the face of the harsh weather. After many hardships, the group finally set foot on the summit of this D-rank dungeon, astonished at their own accomplishment. But the sight before them was horrifying. A giant frost-wraith ape was tearing apart and eating one of its own kind. Chen's teammates behind him began to tremble with fear. They understood that a single strike from the monster could kill them many times over. The ape slowly lifted its head. Its blood-red eyes and jaws dripping with fresh flesh immediately turned toward the group. "Damn it, it sees us!" the bespectacled friend screamed in panic. The monster roared and charged at terrifying speed. The others panicked and fled in all directions. Only Chen remained standing. The moment it drew near, Chen instantly delivered a kick laced with greenish-gold electrical energy straight to the monster's face. A loud explosion rang out, sending the giant boss flying backward to everyone's astonishment, allowing no chance for a counterattack. Chen transformed into a streak of lightning and moved with extreme speed around the ape. A punch carrying the power of thunder slammed into the monster's mouth, putting it completely on the defensive. Golden lightning continued to erupt across the battlefield. Alone, Chen completely overwhelmed the D-rank boss with his terrifying electrokinetic power. Marlon Ma stood frozen, sweat streaming down in shock. He hadn't expected Chen to actually defeat that monster so easily. At the same time, the system notified that Chen had received a frost-wraith ape pelt. Chen quietly stood over the giant corpse, adjusting his combat gloves. The notification showed only 200 express and 1 dropped item, a frost-wraith ape pelt. The team fell silent after such a swift victory. Chen stared at the monster's body with suspicion. He found it very odd to defeat a dungeon boss of D rank and receive so little experience. And the dropped item seemed worthless. Chen's red eyes narrowed slightly at the sense that something was off. Just then, Shang Zuo's cheerful call rang out from behind as he discovered a pile of mana crystals. Shang Zuo waved for everyone to come closer to the shattered hollow of the ancient tree. He loudly told the team to hurry and look. And the others, curious, ran over. Inside the tree hollow glittered countless mana crystals. Shang Zuo guessed the giant had stored them all there, and judging by their size they were at least mid-grade mana crystals. The team visibly rejoiced, eyes bright at the treasure before them. Shang Zuo reached out, imagining that selling this haul would guarantee them a comfortable life. Chen suddenly sensed a strange flow of mana. He spun around and shouted for everyone to stop. But the warning came too late. The moment a hand touched the mana crystal, a blinding flash erupted from within the hollow. A trap had been triggered, unleashing tremendous pressure. The entire team was caught in an explosion of intense ice energy. The earlier cheerful faces turned to panic as they felt death drawing near. A freezing blast enveloped Chen, forcing him to squint against it. An extremely powerful spell was forming within the white mist. A gigantic spiked ice wall rose from the ground, freezing everything around it. The cloud attribute Archmage's Arctic Nova had been fully activated. The scene was left with nothing but cold blocks of ice, imprisoning the students like stone statues. The comms crackled and then lost all signal. In the monitoring room, the feed tracking Si Chen's team suddenly glitched and displayed a red message. Team Si Chen, no signal. All signals from the dungeon vanished. Gong Zan stroked his beard smugly. He mocked that the students had fallen into a trap set by a highly intelligent high-rank monster. He ridiculed them as perpetual losers and burdens to society, and declared the exam effectively over. Kynal Cavendish worried that the current situation was life-threatening for the students. Gong Zan immediately feigned agreement and requested the rescue team intervene quickly, even though that would mean their own team's disqualification. Director Stephen Yuan remained with his arms crossed, calmly watching the other screens. He interrupted and asked that the students be given more time. Stephen Yuan explained that the contestants' bands were still monitoring their physical states, and all vital signs remained stable. Neural data also showed that no one intended to quit. Stephen Yuan affirmed that the decision to withdraw must be made by the contestants themselves. Gong Lin, standing beside him, fell silent at that resolute stance. Back in the dungeon, Marlon Ma was trembling so badly his nose was running. He sneezed loudly in the freezing air. Marlon shivered among the broken ice. Surrounded by teammates frozen solid. He silently felt lucky for his cloud attribute cold resistance. Otherwise he'd be frozen too. A terrifying laugh echoed from behind. And a giant shadow fell over Marlon Ma. The oppressive weight and ghastly laughter froze him in fear. Unable to move, the true master of the dungeon had finally appeared. A towering lich wearing a spiked crown, with a glowing blue energy core in its chest, loomed before Marlon, staring at that dreadful entity. He was stunned and wondered if this was the real lord of the dungeon. Thank you all for supporting my video. I wish you endless happiness and joy in life. If you enjoyed the video, please give me a like and leave a comment to show your support. I sincerely appreciate it.